A man with ancient eyes delivers a grave prophecy of a disaster in 5 years. He speaks from his throne, declaring that humanity faces total annihilation. His words send a wave of shock and disbelief through the gathered crowd. He claims his visions of the future are absolute, a fate that has never once changed. But in that same, unchangeable future, he also saw a glimmer of hope. A group of 7 chosen individuals who are destined to save the world. All eyes turn to the 7 figures, humanity's last and only chance. Among them stands the strongest man in all of humanity, a peerless mind. Beside him are other legendary figures, their faces hidden from view. And even the youngest S-rank mage ever to exist is part of this team. The world's end was prophesied, a sudden and terrifying declaration. But the people found hope, cheering for the heroes who would save them. The existence of these saviors gave humanity a reason to believe again. And from that day forward, the entire world changed drastically. Amidst the global fervor, a young man with solemn eyes watched on. This is where his story, intertwined with the world's fate, truly began. The apocalypse became a media circus, with fans cheering for their favorite saviors. Life, for the most part, continued on with its mundane routines. And our boy, now a janitor, swept the streets as the world debated its heroes. He felt a strange detachment from the so-called end of the world, as if the apocalypse was just some kind of grand festival. We're introduced to Akuta Kuki, watching a broadcast of the Savior's heroic deeds. A sudden memory flashes through his mind, a moment of desperation from his past. On screen, the heroes are celebrated, their immense power on full display. He thinks of someone he knew, a girl now guarding the Ministry of Magic. She had even become a direct subordinate to one of the 7 saviors. A nationally licensed mage, a title he seems to hold in bittersweet regard. His mind drifts back further to a single book on the floor, and to his school days, where he relentlessly devoured every text he could find. But he also remembers the cruel whispers about her, that her efforts were pointless without magic. A kind woman from his past once told him not to worry about what others say. Her smile was a beacon of support, telling Kuki that he could do it. Back in the present, he clutches a book, reaffirming that same belief. That one day, if he just keeps trying, he too will be able to use magic. But his hopeful thoughts are shattered by a cruel, mocking voice. Kuki freezes, the insult hitting him like a physical blow. The taunts continue, calling him trash for doing his job. 2 mages confront him, one with thorny vines telling him to stick to garbage. His mind flashes back to a desperate hope he once held, clinging to the fact that magic usually awakens by middle school. The mage's words cut deep, declaring that if he doesn't have magic now, he never will. A magically charged can strikes Kuki, a petty act of cruelty from his tormentors. All he ever wanted was to fight and protect the world just like his sister. But the bully's taunts are cut short by a sudden, world-shaking event. Just as the prophecy foretold, massive holes tear open across the globe. From these rifts, terrifying monsters pour out to begin their assault on humanity. But just as despair sets in, a broadcast announces that the 7 saviors have arrived. And there they are, humanity's chosen heroes, descending to face the threat. The crowd erupts in cheers, their faith placed entirely in these 7 figures. One of the saviors smiles confidently, promising a swift end to the invasion. One of the saviors declares, it's time to show them the power of humanity. He launches himself into the fray, a blur of golden energy. His attack slams into one of the insectoid monsters with explosive force. The crowd roars, praising the skill of the magic equipment company's president. They're certain that with power like this, the monsters don't stand a chance. But through the smoke and fire, a colossal beast emerges completely unscathed. A wave of confusion washes over the onlookers as they realize the attacks had no effect. Panic begins to set in as they wonder where their heroes have gone. The answer is horrifying, as the company president lies defeated on the ground. Meanwhile, fans in the crowd continue to cheer, unaware of the unfolding tragedy. The fans are still cheering, splattered in red, their smiles frozen in place. But their eyes are wide with a dawning, vacant horror. On the battlefield, the saviors are broken, impaled, and utterly defeated. Even the strongest among them can only look upon their fallen comrades. The crowd, including Kuki's tormentors, finally understands the terrifying reality. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. Their faith shatters as they question the prophecy they had clung to. But for Kuki, a more personal terror takes hold the safety of his sister. He breaks into a desperate sprint towards the Ministry of Magic, calling her name. All thoughts of his own weakness are gone, replaced by a single frantic purpose. He finally finds her, standing beside one of the 7 saviors. But his sister protests, seeing no path for them to escape. A monstrous bird-like creature descends upon them, glowing with terrifying power. In a shocking act of betrayal, the savior shoves Mickey forward, using her as a decoy to take the full force of the monster's attack. Kuki can only watch, his mind reeling from the betrayal. As the hero flees, he proudly proclaims his status as one of the chosen seven, insisting his own life is far more valuable than hers. Kuki rushes to his fallen sister's side, begging her to hold on, but she can only tell him to run as the monster looms over them both. With nothing but his own body, Kuki stands between the monster and his sister. Even at a time like this, she can only think of how amazing he is. She looks up at him with a faint, proud smile on her face. She marvels at the fierce, unwavering determination in his eyes. But inside, Kuki is screaming, cursing his own powerlessness. As the monster's claw descends, he doesn't care what happens to him, pleading for any power that could just save his sister's life. It's a desperate, primal scream for the magic he's never had. And in that moment, a strange crest of light appears on his hand. A brilliant energy surges from him, just as the monster strikes. His sister can only stare in utter disbelief. Kuki stumbles back, overwhelmed by the surge of power, asking what she's done. She explains that he will finally have magic, and the secret of the mark will be revealed. It's a heavy burden, but she believes he can save the world if he never gives up. But as the power settles, Kuki feels his own body suddenly grow weak. He realizes that all around them, the monsters have frozen in place. His sister clutches a book, glad she took it from the ministry's archives. A pillar of light erupts from her as Kuki watches, helpless. His mind flashes back to the day the prophecy was first declared, and to the look of shock on his own face as he heard the world would end. The world around him erupts in cheers just as it did 5 years ago. Kuki finds himself back on the ground, utterly bewildered by the sudden shift. He checks his phone, and the date confirms his impossible suspicion. He's been sent back 5 years into the past, to the day it all began. The familiar chatter of his classmates fills the air, discussing the world's end. But their fear is overshadowed by their faith in the 7 chosen saviors. On the giant screen, the heroes' faces begin to appear one by one. First is Sagai Tetsu, hailed as the strongest man in all of humanity, followed by the powerful tycoon Juman Seijiro, who holds the world's economy in his hands, and then Igawe Himika, the enigmatic queen of the underworld. Then Kyoki Ranbu, a monster with infinite magic power. Ashiya Hikaru, the greatest mind in the world. The youngest genius in history, Suzaki Irori. And finally, Araki Leo, the popular mage blessed with everything. The crowd marvels at the incredible lineup of heroes, their minds reeling at the reality of it all. Their faith is absolute, certain that these 7 will save them. All around Kuki, his classmates erupt in joyous cheers. But he stands alone, wondering if anyone else remembers the absolute hell that this day truly brought. He stands there, a lone figure burdened by the memories of a future no one else knows. But a sudden vibration from his phone shatters his dark reverie. He looks down to see an incoming call from his mother. Answering it, he's met with a panicked voice telling him that his sister has collapsed. The scene shifts to a large modern medical center. Kuki bursts through a hospital room door, calling out his sister's name. He finds his mother standing by the bedside, her face etched with worry. In the bed lies Mickey, pale and unconscious. His mother explains that even the doctors have no idea what's wrong with her. Kuki stares down at his sister, realizing with a cold dread that this never happened 5 years ago. His mind flashes back to his sister's final moments, holding that very same book. Kuki's fist clenches, a surge of determination running through him. He races back to his school, a desperate idea taking shape. He heads straight for the library, remembering a specific text he once read. His hand scans the shelves, searching for that one particular volume. He pulls out the book, quickly finding the page he was looking for. It describes an ancient forbidden spell known as regression magic. He finally understands that his sister used this on him, but the book lacks the details he needs to save her. His search is interrupted by the idle chatter of 2 classmates he recognizes. One of them dreams of becoming the strongest savior, just to have girls fawn all over him. His friend agrees, noting that savior number 7 is the most popular with girls, boasting over 10 million followers. The words 7 saviors echo in Kuki's mind. He remembers how everyone was obsessed with their rankings and popularity. He recalls the blind faith everyone had 5 years ago. A faith built on the lie that the saviors were anything but helpless. A horrifying realization dawns on him. If nothing changes, that same future will happen all over again. He thinks of his sister's sacrifice, her final desperate wish, and he knows that he has to be the one to change their fate. But his moment of determination is broken by the voices of his classmates who have found him. One of them looms over him with a sneer, mocking him as a magic otaku who only talks to books. The bully snatches the book away, mocking Kuki for reading about magic again. He sneers, questioning why Kuki bothers when he has zero magic power. With a cruel grin, he decides to offer a more practical lesson. His hand ignites with a magic crest, promising to show Kuki some real power. But Kuki's eyes are sharp, recognizing the telltale sign of a skill attack. It's the same cruel power used to force other students to their knees. Kuki simply closes his eyes, bracing himself for the familiar humiliation. He stands his ground, refusing to flinch as the bully moves to strike. But when he opens his eyes, his gaze is cold and utterly defiant. The bully stares back in shock, wondering why his skill isn't working at all. The bully can't believe his eyes, screaming that Kuki should be on the ground. His friend is just as confused, wondering why the skill failed. Frustrated, the bully unleashes a more direct attack, summoning thorny vines. But Kuki sidesteps the attack with impossible ease, leaving his tormentor stunned. The bully knows that a powerless nobody like Kuki shouldn't be able to match his speed. Kuki, however, remains perfectly calm as the attack misses him by inches. He remembers a fundamental rule of magic. A vast difference in power can nullify weaker spells entirely, and with greater magic comes enhanced physical abilities. The two bullies can only stare, their arrogance turning to fear. Kuki finally understands he has magic now, a gift from his sister's final sacrifice. He clenches his fist, and the crest on his hand glows with a brilliant white light. He remembers his sister's words that he had a mark just like her. The bullies are stunned, accusing him of awakening a skill so late in life. But Kuki himself is just as confused, trying to understand what his new power even is. The bully dismisses the white mark as weak, calling his previous success a fluke. But as Kuki focuses, his eyes begin to glow with an otherworldly blue light. A strange message appears in his mind, confirming he's acquired the bully's skills. Suddenly, the world around him transforms into a strange digital space, leaving him utterly baffled. A calm voice cuts through his confusion, introducing herself as the librarian of this place. She smiles, addressing Kuki by name and referring to his newly awakened skill. Kuki looks around in utter disbelief, trying to process that this is his skill. He's in a vast empty space that resembles a library, but with only 2 books. Those 2 books float down from the shelf and hover right in front of him. The librarian explains that this is a tutorial for his new ability, where every skill he acquires will manifest as a readable book. As he holds the glowing tomes, he thinks back to his 2 tormentors. He quickly realizes the colors of the books match the bully's magic crests. A notification confirms it. He's acquired Gravity Manipulation and Thorn User. The librarian praises his new skills, explaining that this is how his power will work from now on. She then asks if he's ready to read one and try it out for himself. Kuki asks in disbelief if reading these books will truly grant him their powers. The librarian calmly confirms it, adding that this is his own mental world. She explains that time in the real world is frozen, allowing him to read as much as he wants. He holds the 2 tomes, the weight of this new reality sinking in. His mind flashes back to the bullies and the very skills he now holds. The thought of wielding such power himself leaves him completely flustered. The librarian warns that the contents of these books can be difficult to get through, but Kuki doesn't hesitate, placing his hand on the book to begin. His immediate resolve seems to take the librarian by surprise, but her surprise quickly turns into a warm, approving smile. He realizes this is everything he's ever wanted: a place to read magic books in peace. If this library fills with more books, he could become the strongest of all. The librarian tries to warn him about restrictions, but he's completely lost in the moment. He takes a deep breath, clutching the book with a reverence he's always held. In what feels like an instant, he's finished, much to the librarian's surprise. His eyes snap open, glowing with a newfound power as he returns to reality. Back in the schoolyard, his 2 tormentors are still frozen in place. They can only stare in disbelief, wondering why their attacks have no effect on him. Kuki marvels at his own hand, realizing that no time has passed at all. And on his skin, the crests of the skills he just acquired now glow alongside his own. With a single thought, Kuki's feet lift from the ground, and his tormentors are suddenly ripped into the air, screaming in confusion. Kuki looks on with cold eyes, admitting he'd always been envious of their skills. But he knew he could use them so much better than they ever did. The bully only ever used gravity manipulation for simple physical attacks, but Kuki shows him it can be used in far more creative ways. The bully's face contorts in terror as the ground rushes up to meet him. He's so terrified that he completely loses control. And now Kuki turns his attention to the second skill he acquired. Thorny vines erupt from the ground, wrapping tightly around his former tormentors. The bully can only scream in defiance, accusing Kuki of stealing their skills. But Kuki clenches his fist, a fierce light in his eyes, declaring that this power is finally his. He then unleashes a new aspect of the skill, draining the very life force from his tormentors. And in a strange, almost gentle display of power, a single white flower blooms from the vine. Kuki looks down on them, stating that such incredible skills were always wasted on them. His gaze is cold, his resolve absolute, a world away from the boy he was just moments ago. He looks at the glowing crest on his hand and offers a silent thank you to his sister. With the power she gave him and this new skill, he makes a solemn vow. He will stop the future the saviors failed to prevent, and he will save his sister. But his moment of determination is cut short by a hand on his shoulder. The voice belongs to a young man in a red jacket, who asks who Kuki is calling a fake. Kuki stares in shock, recognizing him as Araki Leo, the seventh savior. Leo explains he felt a strange power nearby and came to investigate, casually asking if Kuki is a hater. He warns that any slander against him could cause trouble for his public image. To prove his point, he holds up his phone, revealing he's live-streaming the entire confrontation. He looms over Kuki, demanding an apology for his millions of followers to see. But Kuki clenches his fist, refusing to back down and confirming he meant every word. His mind flashes back to the future he alone remembers to the moment Leo betrayed his sister. He sees her sacrificed and declares that Leo is nothing more than scum who hurts people. The savior's smile vanishes, replaced by a cold, silent glare. With all the rage in his soul, Kuki screams that Leo is no savior. He stands over the hero, his accusation hanging in the air. But a sudden wave of fear hits him as he realizes what he's just done. Leo's eyes glow with a cold fury, calling Kuki's challenge pathetic. Kuki clenches his fist, refusing to back down from his stance. He confirms that it wasn't a slip of the tongue. He meant every word. The savior scoffs, telling him that he's in no position to save anyone. But Kuki just roars back that a fake like him could never save the world. A brilliant golden light begins to emanate from Kuki's hand. But Leo's own power erupts around him, a swirling vortex of energy. Leo stares back, his own golden aura flaring in response to Kuki's challenge. But Kuki is the one who feels the pressure, realizing the immense gap in their power. Just as the confrontation is about to explode, Leo suddenly lowers his hand. His attention is drawn away by the excited squeals of two nearby students. A small crowd has gathered, starstruck to see the famous Araki Leo at their school. With his public image on the line, Leo dismisses Kuki as nothing more than a nuisance. He turns his back, telling our boy he got lucky this time and to watch himself in the future. The hero's charming smile returns as he offers autographs to his adoring fans. Kuki can only watch, a cold sweat breaking out as he processes the terrifying power he just faced. He knows that if their fight had continued, he would have been utterly defeated. But his thoughts are cut short as a stray fireball comes hurtling right at him. A young woman with pink hair calls out, waving frantically in apology. She explains she threw her spell too far during practice and asks if he's all right. This is Kanai Mochi, an honors student with some of the highest magic power in the school. She's on track to become a licensed mage, an elite title granted by the Ministry of Magic. The exam to earn that title is notoriously difficult, with a pass rate of less than 0.01%. Later, the two of them walk through the school's empty halls. She brings up the rumor that he was the one who defeated his two former bullies. Kanai recalls that just a short time ago, Kuki had no magic power whatsoever. He confirms her suspicions, explaining that a skill has finally awakened inside him. She admits with a grin that she's relieved someone finally dealt with those bullies. Kuki thinks to himself that while she's a bit strange, she's always been a good person. He remembers she was one of the few who ever spoke to him, and wonders if she might actually believe his story. Deciding to test the waters, he asks her what she thinks about the seven saviors. Her eyes light up with admiration, declaring that it's her dream to become the strongest mage just like them. Kuki's faint hope begins to fade at her all-too-familiar answer. He realizes that if he told her the truth right now, she would never believe him. But Kanai suddenly has an idea, suggesting he should get his new skill officially measured. The thought seems to catch Kuki completely off guard. The scene shifts to the school's gymnasium, the designated place for such tests. Kanai proudly presents a machine in the exclusive honors class training room. She explains it can measure magic power while fighting virtual monsters. The idea sparks a new resolve within Kuki, a path to becoming a licensed mage himself. He wants to become stronger than the saviors, a hero people can actually trust. His eyes burn with a newfound purpose. But his sudden movement startles Kanai completely. Their session is interrupted by a teacher who reminds them this area is off limits. Kuki ignores the scolding and makes a bold declaration to join the honors class. The teacher scoffs, remembering that Kuki was ranked dead last in the entire grade. He doubles down on his claim, declaring he'll take the licensed mage exam in just 1 month. Kanai jumps to his defense, eagerly asking the teacher to at least let him try the machine. The teacher reluctantly agrees, but only because a top student like Kanai is vouching for him. With that, the machine activates, bathing them in a brilliant blue light. They're transported to a virtual forest, a perfect recreation of the monster-filled rifts. Kanai asks what level of monster they'll be facing, and the teacher confirms it's set to E rank. A small bird-like creature appears as Kanai explains that fighting it will measure their power. She decides to go first, her hand igniting with a confident burst of flame. She launches a powerful fireball, shaped like a phoenix, directly at the creature. But the attack barely seems to faze the monster, leaving Kanai stunned that her hit wasn't enough. But the creature suddenly grows into a massive A-rank monster, far beyond what they expected. The teacher realizes in horror that the machine was set to A rank, an impossible challenge. But Kanai's fear turns to excitement, seeing this as a chance to prove she's A rank material. The beast unleashes a volley of fiery projectiles, showing off its immense power. The teacher tries to warn her that an A rank is a foe for licensed mages, not students. His warning comes too late as the monster strikes, knocking Kanai to the ground. She screams for the teacher to initiate an emergency escape, realizing the true danger. But back in the real world, the safety device on the machine has failed. The teacher shouts that he can't get them out of the simulation. Trapped and injured, Kanai can only wonder what they're supposed to do now. Kuki realizes that just like a real rift, their only way out is to defeat the boss. But Kanai is injured, screaming for an escape that will never come. The teacher is helpless as the safety system remains completely unresponsive. With no way out, Kanai's hope begins to crumble into despair. The rules of this simulation have become terrifyingly real. To survive, they must somehow defeat a monster far beyond their level. The A-rank beast dives down for the final blow. Kanai freezes, knowing she's too injured to dodge the attack. But just as it's about to strike, Kuki pushes off the ground. He shoves her to safety, taking her place in the monster's path. Kuki stands over her, the crest on his hand glowing as he asks if she's all right. Kanai stares in shock, recognizing the brown crest of gravity manipulation. But their moment is cut short as the monster dives down for another attack. She panics, unable to believe he thinks they can actually defeat it. Suddenly, Kuki is pulled back into the strange digital space of his own mind. The librarian greets him, explaining that she has a new lesson for this powerful enemy. She reveals that the skills he's acquired can be used at the same time, a concept that leaves Kuki stunned, even as she warns of the increased power cost. Back in the simulation, Kanai tries to warn him that his new skill alone won't be enough, but Koki reveals his hand, showing her it's not just one skill he's awakened. Kanai can only stare, her mind struggling to comprehend what she's seeing. A new skill manifests, a fusion of gravity manipulation and thorn user. Thorny vines erupt from the ground, wrapping around Kuki's arms. He reaches out, his eyes locked on the A-rank beast. The monster lets out a furious screech, sensing the new threat. But it's already too late to stop what's coming. Kuki demonstrates how the skills are truly meant to be used. The thorny vines shoot forward with incredible speed, wrapping around the massive beast and binding it completely. The monster struggles, but the vines hold firm as it begins to dissolve into data. As they exit the simulation, Kuki admits the fight took more out of him than he expected. Kanai can't believe he defeated the A-rank monster in a single hit, and that he used 2 different attribute skills at the same time. But lurking nearby is another student, Seiko Yuji, who seems disappointed they survived. He reveals he was the one who hacked the machine, mocking Kuki's ambition to join the honors class. But his arrogance turns to shock as he sees them walk out completely unharmed. The teacher rushes over, frantic with worry, asking if they're all right. Kanai confirms they're fine, all thanks to Kuki defeating the monster in one blow. The teacher is left speechless, his mind struggling to process what he just heard. He looks at the machine's data, completely baffled by the unprecedented results of the test. Kuki turns to the student in the doorway, calmly asking if he tampered with the device. Kanai explodes with rage, grabbing Seiko and accusing him of nearly killing them. But Kuki has a different idea, asking the boy to fix the machine with his hacking skill. And as he speaks, the familiar golden crest appears on his hand. The flustered student approaches the machine, trying to play along. But Kuki's eyes glow with that otherworldly blue light, confirming that he has successfully acquired the electronic hacking skill. A new book appears in his mental library as he smiles, realizing how useful this new power will be. With the situation handled, the teacher grabs the terrified student by the shoulder. He drags the boy away, promising to report him as Seiko desperately pleads his innocence. Koki watches on as Kanai excitedly explains the situation to their teacher. The teacher stands before the honors class, looking a bit flustered. He announces that a new student will be joining their ranks starting today. Kuki steps forward and formally introduces himself to the class. Whispers immediately break out as they recognize the boy who used to have no magic. One student eagerly raises her hand, asking which of the 7 saviors he admires most. The others chime in, assuming he must have an idol among the world's heroes. But the mere mention of the saviors brings a dark, cold look to Kuki's face. The teacher's expression grows tense, sensing the sudden shift in the room. The students are left stunned and confused by his silent, intense reaction. Kuki finally breaks the silence, declaring that if they trust the saviors, the world will perish. His classmates can only stare, completely baffled by his sudden outburst. He insists that if the talented people in this very room become stronger, they might actually have a chance to prevent the end of the world. He points to the class, urging them to fight and promising to grow stronger alongside them. Stronger than anyone, so they can be the ones to save the world 5 years from now. His passionate speech concludes, leaving him standing resolute before the class. But his words are met with apathy as one student simply pulls out his phone. His screen is filled with fan groups dedicated to the very saviors Kuki just condemned. The online world remains a storm of adoration, completely oblivious to the coming tragedy. The online world responds to his passionate plea with a single dismissive word. His classmates just laugh, scrolling through their phones without a care. All across the city, people are glued to their screens, lost in the hype. Koki can only watch as the world remains blissfully ignorant of the truth. But elsewhere, the man who delivered the prophecy seems to sense a change. The strongest man in humanity, Sage Tetsu, stands among his followers. The tycoon Juman Seijiro calmly checks his device, unaware of the coming storm. Back in the classroom, at least one student seems to be taking his words seriously. His warning echoes in the silence that the saviors will lead them to ruin. But for most, his declaration is just too strange to even comprehend. The teacher nervously tries to change the subject, reminding everyone about next month's exam. But the damage is done, leaving the entire class staring at Kuki in stunned silence. Later, the teacher makes a frantic phone call, explaining how the powerless boy has changed. He reports that Kuki's magic is now unmeasurable and that he holds some very radical ideas. He relays Kuki's shocking claim that the 7 saviors are destined to fail. But the man on the other end of the line simply agrees to let Kuki take the exam. This well-dressed man then turns to someone else in the room, asking for their thoughts. He's speaking to none other than Sage Tetsu, the strongest of the 7 saviors. The hero listens with his eyes closed, a stoic expression on his face. He then stands and walks away, declaring that he doesn't care about the opinions of others. The well-dressed man watches him go, a trail of ice left in the hero's wake. He simply smiles, remarking that the strongest savior is still a cold man. Back at school, Kuki is already feeling the weight of his declaration. He sits alone on a bench, realizing he's alienated everyone around him. Rumors are already spreading like wildfire, painting him as the crazy kid from the video. He understands their reaction, admitting that even he once admired the 7 saviors. But his lonely brooding is interrupted by a fireball whizzing past his head. A familiar voice scolds him for making such a pathetic face. It's Kanai, who cheerfully asks him to just call her Momo from now on. She finds him interesting, both for his sudden power and for daring to condemn the saviors. She agrees that they can't just rely on the saviors, and that his words have inspired her to get stronger too. She tries to lighten the mood, suggesting that maybe the end of the world isn't even coming. But Kuki's grim certainty cuts her off, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He knows no one will believe him now, which is why he must become a licensed mage people can trust. Kanai's eyes light up, latching onto his new goal. With a fierce grin, she declares that they'll just have to pass the exam together. A small smile appears on Kuki's face, grateful to have found his first true ally. Their new pact is sealed with the promise of a ramen dinner. But his thoughts soon return to the reason he's fighting in the first place. He stands by his sister's bedside, his vow to save her silently renewed. He tells his sister that he's taking the licensed mage exam. Since it only happens every 4 years, he knows this is his only chance to change the future. He looks down at her peaceful, sleeping face, his motivation clear. His resolve hardens as he clenches his fist. He knows he cannot afford to fail. A month passes, and the day of the exam finally arrives at the Ministry of Magic. As he walks through the grand auditorium, he can feel the eyes of other students on him. They recognize him as the cringy guy from the video, mocking his very presence here. But a familiar hand lands on his shoulder, breaking his focus. It's Kanai, who offers a bright smile and wishes him luck on the exam. Koki returns her smile, his confidence bolstered by her support. His expression hardens with resolve, ready to face the challenge ahead. The exam begins, and the room fills with the silent, intense focus of dozens of aspiring mages. The first round is a written test, and even a top student like Kanai seems to be struggling. But Kuki's attention drifts to the proctor's computer at the front of the room. A sly idea takes shape, and the crest on his hand begins to glow with a faint golden light. He discreetly activates his electronic hacking skill, reaching out to the proctor's device. Later, the students gather in the hall, anxiously waiting for the results to be posted. Kanai's eyes go wide with disbelief at what she sees on the ranking board. Kuki stands calmly beside the list, having secured third place by hacking the exam for the answer key. Kanai, however, is in a full-blown panic over her own ranking. Kuki calmly reassures her that a top student like her has nothing to worry about. But the written portion was just a preliminary, designed to weed out the weakest candidates. Kuki recalls the month he spent relentlessly researching skills in his mental library. He's grown far more adept at using the binding abilities he acquired from his bullies, and he believes a new powerful technique is finally within his grasp. The remaining students are gathered in a massive, empty hall for the next phase. He and Kanai find themselves in the same group for a 100-person survival battle. An official explains that a virtual field will be deployed, and elimination comes from taking too much damage. Points are awarded for every opponent defeated, and only the top 10 will advance to the next round. The proctor explains that this second round is where most of them will fail. Out of the 100 in their group, only 10 will be allowed to advance. With a snap of his fingers, he gives them a time limit of just 15 minutes. The world around Kuki dissolves into a brilliant blue light, transporting him to the virtual battlefield as the second round begins. Kanai cheerfully waves goodbye to Kuki, already surrounded by her own flames. She immediately leaps away, deciding to go it alone for now. But she's immediately confronted by another student, ready to strike. Kanai doesn't hesitate, unleashing a massive fireball of her own. The powerful attack completely engulfs her opponent in a fiery explosion. The student is completely overwhelmed by the sheer force of her flames. A notification confirms his elimination, marking Kanai's first victory. She celebrates her first points as Kuki notes how much she comes alive in a fight. But Kuki's reputation as a late bloomer has already made him a target for others. He knew this would happen, fully expecting to be challenged by those who see him as weak. One of them immediately launches a skill, hoping for an easy takedown. But the attack simply passes right through Kuki's body without leaving a scratch. The student can only stare in disbelief, wondering how he dodged an unavoidable attack. His ally tries a different approach, attempting to blind Kuki with a smokescreen. But Kuki stands his ground, knowing their magic is useless when the power gap is this large. Frustrated, one of them switches to a physical attack, hardening his fist with an iron body skill. But Kuki's eyes remain cold and unfazed by the incoming blow. He raises a hand and the attack is completely nullified, much to his opponent's shock. A notification confirms that he's just acquired all 3 of their skills, which he notes will be quite useful. He thanks his stunned opponents for the demonstration of their powers, and with a focused gaze, he prepares to show them what real magic looks like. He unleashes a new technique, a massive man-eating flower that erupts from the ground. The 3 students are instantly eliminated, and Kuki is pleased that his new technique is working perfectly. Meanwhile, the proctors watch on, confirming that Kuki is the one they were discussing, his power clearly abnormal. The head proctor simply smiles, intrigued by this unexpected development. But the head proctor wonders if any of them can even land a single hit. Just then, a new challenger steps onto the virtual battlefield. It's none other than Araki Leo, the 7th savior, making a grand entrance. The head proctor suddenly announces a brand new rule for the exam. He declares that any student who manages to land even one hit on their guest will immediately pass the entire test. The students are stunned, weighing the impossible task against the incredible reward. A junior proctor protests the recklessness, but he's told this is for Leo's online channel. It's just a promotional stunt, as no one actually expects a student to succeed. Leo spreads his arms wide, arrogantly inviting every single one of them to try and fight him. But Leo's smile turns into a cruel sneer, admitting they're just fodder to make him look good for his stream. The other students, however, see this as their one big chance, believing they can win if they all attack together. He casually remarks on the troubles of being popular as the students rush him from all sides. With a single wave of his hand, he effortlessly blasts them all away, declaring they won't touch him so easily. But through the chaos, his eyes lock onto a single figure who managed to withstand the blast. His mind flashes back to their first encounter and to the face he saw on his livestream. He remembers broadcasting the boy's defiant face to all of his followers. And he remembers the furious accusation that he was no savior at all. Back in the present, Kuki stands firm, having blocked the attack with his thorny vines. The savior's playful demeanor vanishes, promising to give Kuki a special, thorough examination of his own. The other students are blown back by a powerful vortex of energy. Leo's face twists with rage as he calls Kuki's defiance pathetic. He unleashes a brutal attack that rips through the other students, who are caught in the crossfire of his overwhelming power. The savior seems surprised, realizing he's hit more than just his intended target. But Kanai steps forward, questioning how a hero could be so reckless. Leo dismisses her with a cruel insult and a blast of his own energy. She questions his actions, wondering if this is truly what a savior does. He mocks her powerful flames, calling them nothing more than a circus trick. And with a single, effortless attack, he sends her flying backwards. But Kuki appears in a flash, standing protectively over his fallen friend. His mind flashes back to another desperate sprint from his past, to the moment his sister was sacrificed right before his very eyes. That memory fuels a cold rage as his own power begins to surge. Leo scoffs that skills are a lottery and threatens to eliminate anyone who sees his true self. But Kanai struggles back to her feet, refusing to stay down. Kuki unleashes a new combination, fusing Smokescreen with his thorny vines. The sudden spike in magic power leaves the savior completely stunned. Kuki raises a hand to his mouth, unleashing a thick, dark smoke. The smokescreen envelops Leo, catching the arrogant hero completely off guard. Leo dismisses the smoke as nothing more than a simple distraction. But thorny vines erupt from the darkness, striking him with impossible speed. The attack leaves a single, bloody scratch across the savior's perfect face. Kuki stares back, his eyes glowing, confirming that he landed the hit. From the ground, Kanai watches in awe, realizing he's already mastered his new skills. She can only wonder just how strong her new friend is destined to become. But Leo is absolutely furious, his aura flaring as he questions Kuki's audacity. He rants about the value of his face, a treasure for his millions of fans. The savior's rage boils over, promising that Kuki will pay for leaving a single mark on him. And with a terrifying display of power, he activates a summoning skill. A massive spectral tiger erupts from a vortex of blue energy. Leo unleashes his ultimate skill, the phantom beast known as Fuma. The creature roars, its power crackling through the virtual space. Kuki can only stare, realizing the sheer scale of this new threat. He knows its strength is on a completely different level than the A-rank monster, and is even comparable to the beast that took his sister's life in the future. Leo smirks, boasting that his skill is an incredibly rare summoning type. He claims this beast is easily S-rank in terms of power, a power that he can control and amplify at will. This is the true strength of a top-tier skill, and he's about to unleash it all on Kuki. The spectral beast lets out a terrifying soul-shaking roar, but Kuki activates his newly acquired iron body skill and charges forward, only to be swatted aside by the creature's immense power. The blow sends him reeling, the force of it overwhelming his defenses. He collapses to his knees as Leo mockingly praises him for surviving the first hit. But the savior promises that the next attack will be his last. The phantom beast looms over Kuki, ready to deliver the final blow. Kanai can only watch in horror, screaming for the hero to stop. Kuki understands that at this rate he's completely outmatched. A wave of terror washes over him as he stares down his own demise. But in his moment of terror, he's pulled back into his mental library. The librarian's voice echoes from his memory, telling him that now is the time to apply the special technique she taught him, the bind skill. His mind flashes back to 3 weeks before the exam, when she first explained this new concept. She told him that skills could be more than just added together. They could be multiplied to create something new. It was a possibility that had never even occurred to him, a way to exponentially increase his own power. If he could fuse his skills instead of just using them side by side, he could become stronger than he ever imagined. She had warned him it was a high-risk technique, one he shouldn't need for the exam, but the option was always there. He had vowed to master this new power by the time of the exam, a promise that brought a knowing smile to the librarian's face. The first step was to read 2 skill books simultaneously, and from their pages, forge an entirely new skill in his mind. Kuki closed his eyes, focusing all of his will on the task. And in a flash of power, he saw the fusion take shape. Gravity manipulation and thorn user, bound as one. But back in the library, theory was proving much harder than practice. He tried to channel the combined power of gravity and thorns, only to fail spectacularly, shouting that nothing was happening. The librarian calmly reminded him that what he was attempting was no simple task, as even using two skills at once is considered a superhuman feat. She explains that to combine skills and create entirely new magic is to step into the realm of the gods, a power that cannot be mastered so easily. Back in the present, the proctor watches the battle unfold, completely unaware. Kuki knows he's been training for 3 weeks but still hasn't grasped this new power. But he also knows that if he fails here, Leo will kill both him and Kanai. In his desperation, his mind races to another book in his library. He thinks of Kanai's skill, the one he copied from her just a short time ago. He remembers Leo's cruel words, mocking her power as a simple circus act. And he remembers the overwhelming force that struck her down without a second thought. Kuki clenches his fist, refusing to accept Leo's cruel dismissal of his friend's power. He knows that the simplicity of Kanai's fireballs is exactly what makes them so versatile. A sudden heat fills his chest as a new idea begins to take shape. In his mind, he sees the two skills he needs to combine. And with a surge of confidence, he knows he can finally pull it off. Back on the battlefield, a brilliant red aura erupts around his body. His eyes glow with a fierce, unwavering determination. The phantom beast lets out another soul-shaking roar. But Kuki stands ready to meet its power with his own. Leo can only stare in disbelief, wondering how Kuki still has this much strength left. Kanai can only watch in awe, a hopeful smile on her face. A torrent of red energy surges around Kuki's body. He raises a hand to the sky, debris floating around him as he channels his new power. A confident smile spreads across his face as he unleashes his brand new fused skill, Meteor Shower. Leo can only stare in shock as the sky fills with flaming projectiles. He screams for his phantom beast to intercept the attack. Fuma unleashes a massive blast of its own energy, colliding with the meteor shower in a brilliant explosion. But Kuki stands firm, continuing to rain down destruction from above. The phantom beast is battered by the relentless barrage of fire. The entire battlefield erupts in a cataclysmic explosion. Leo can only stare in disbelief, refusing to accept what he's seeing. But Kuki stands his ground, his will unbroken by the strain of his own power. Even the proctors are stunned, realizing this fight is far beyond a simple exam. The shockwave sends the other students flying, caught in the clash of titans. From the sidelines, Kanai watches with a fierce, unwavering gaze. And as the smoke clears, the S-rank beast dissolves into nothingness. Kuki smirks, having proven the true potential of the very skill Leo had mocked. His words leave Kanai completely stunned, her heart racing at his unexpected defense. Kuki stares him down, declaring that Leo only relies on strong skills but isn't strong himself. He calls the savior the true bottom feeder for looking down on everyone else. Leo's mind reels, unable to accept the insult. He's always believed he was different, special. But Kuki presses on, insisting there's no such thing as chosen people, and that no one is destined to be unchosen either. The savior's arrogance returns with a vengeance, scoffing at Kuki's words. He proudly proclaims that he is one of the chosen 7, but Kuki's gaze remains cold and unwavering. And with a surge of power, he declares he'll prove just how wrong the savior is. A flashback takes us to a 6-year-old Araki Leo, already looking down on the world. He remembers a dinner with his parents, a moment that would shape his entire life. His mother told him he was special, a chosen one who could have anything he wanted. His father agreed, adding that he could take from anyone because everyone else was trash. From the day he was born, this was the only lesson he was ever taught. A lesson he took to heart, stepping on others to get what he wanted. He was told he could have anything, and that he could do anything, all because the people around him were nothing more than garbage. And so he stood above them all, convinced that he was truly a special person. A younger Leo stands proudly beside his newly awakened phantom beast. The other students were immediately captivated by his rare summoning skill. This 1-in-a-million power only reaffirmed his belief that he was a chosen one. He treated his powerful beast like a toy, ordering it to perform tricks for him. But the creature itself was a terrifying force of nature. He boasted that even a monster this huge was completely under his command. With so much talent and an easy life, he believed he needed nothing else. Because back in the present, he already has everything: family, women, and skills. He even has all the money he could ever want. But the other students are finally starting to see the truth, questioning if this is who Leo really is. But Leo just pulls out a strange green potion and drinks it down. He explains it's a super rare item that can't be found anywhere. Not only does it offer full recovery, but it also doubles his magic power. Kuki can only stare, realizing it's a powerful enhancement item. Leo boasts that it's something Kuki could never afford in his entire life. And since his power is doubled, Fuma's strength is doubled as well. A cold sweat runs down Kuki's face as the reality of the situation sinks in. The savior taunts him, knowing Kuki has barely any strength left to fight. And with a cruel, confident smirk, he prepares to end this once and for all. Kanai is caught in the crossfire, unable to do anything but watch. With a crazed grin, Leo orders his phantom beast to finish Kuki off completely. But the spectral tiger remains perfectly still, ignoring its master's command. Kuki looks on, his expression cold and unreadable. Leo's arrogance turns to frustration as he demands to know why his skill won't obey. Suddenly, the beast turns on its own master, swatting him away with a powerful blow. The creature lets out a low, menacing snarl. Its form shifts, a third eye opening as it looms over the terrified savior. Leo can't believe it, screaming that his own skill should never be able to defy him. But Kuki simply stares, a cold, knowing look in his eyes. Kuki realizes he's acquired the skill, a new book appearing in his mind. Leo can only stare in disbelief at the sight of another magic book. Kuki understands that while there's only one Fuma, it will obey the master with the stronger connection. And he clenches his fist, ready to prove that master is him. The savior just scoffs, dismissing it as a simple copy-type skill. He screams at the beast, demanding its loyalty based on their long history together. But Kuki explains that the phantom beast wanted to trust him too. The words seem to catch the arrogant hero completely off guard. He admits that even after copying the skill, he couldn't connect with Fuma at first. Not until he saw how cruelly Leo treated the very power he was given. Kuki explains that Leo's own arrogant attitude is what finally changed the beast's mind. Fuma's eyes glow with a new, unwavering loyalty. The phantom beast now stands guard over Kuki, its new chosen master. He tells the savior that after connecting with Fuma, he finally understood that the beast is a living being with the right to choose who it serves. Leo can only scream in denial, demanding his power return to him. But Kuki reminds him of his own boast, that Fuma's power is now doubled. The spectral tiger gathers a massive ball of energy in its jaws, and with a mighty roar, it unleashes a devastating blast of wind. The attack slams into Leo, sending the so-called savior flying across the battlefield. The savior screams as his own power tears him apart. He's sent tumbling through the air, utterly defeated. But even on the ground, his arrogance remains, refusing to accept his loss. Kuki reaches out, his voice filled with a cold fury, demanding an apology for his sister. The savior can only stare back in shock, unable to comprehend what's happening. With a surge of gravity magic, Kuki forces the hero to his knees. Leo can only scream in defiance as he's crushed by the overwhelming pressure. And just like that, the seventh savior is eliminated from the exam. From the sidelines, Kanai can only watch in utter disbelief. The other students are just as stunned, their minds reeling at the impossible sight. He can hardly believe it himself, he actually defeated one of the seven saviors. But the strain of the battle finally catches up to him. The scene shifts to a modern medical center. Kuki finally opens his eyes, waking up in a hospital bed. A frantic Kanai rushes to his side, relieved to see him awake. She explains that he collapsed from magical exhaustion and has been out for an entire week. But she insists that she's the one who should be thanking him. With a grateful smile, she thanks him for protecting her from the so-called hero. Her earnest gratitude leaves Kuki a little flustered, but his mind snaps back to his goal, suddenly asking what happened with the exam. With a brilliant smile, Kanai proudly announces that she passed the exam. Kuki offers a faint smile, genuinely happy for his friend's success. But he assumes he must have failed after collapsing and publicly humiliating a savior. His hand clenches the sheet, his mind racing with the consequences for the future. But Kanai looks at him, confused by his detached congratulations. She points a finger right at him, revealing that he passed the exam as well. The scene shifts to the grand halls of the Ministry of Magic, where the other students can only stare, knowing that passing was just the beginning. Because Kuki didn't just pass, he placed first in the entire exam, and now whispers fill the hall, questioning how a savior could lose to a mere student. Kuki knows that by defeating a savior, he's planted a seed of doubt in everyone's minds, and he hopes that now, finally, they might start to believe his warnings. The scene shifts to the grand inauguration ceremony, where the world's strongest is about to speak. It's none other than Sagai Tetsu, the first and most powerful of the seven saviors. But the other students whisper, wondering if he's just as weak as the savior Kuki defeated. With a single word, the hero commands silence, his voice echoing with power. And in an instant, the entire hall is encased in a massive prison of ice. Kuki can only stare, stunned by the sheer scale of magic unleashed in a single moment. The savior's gaze is cold as he tells them that words are useless against the enemies they will face. He warns that their magic is nothing but food for the monsters waiting to devour them all. He tells them that becoming stronger is the only way to survive this new life, and that any licensed mage who isn't strong has no value whatsoever. The scene shifts to an empty playground, a memory from long ago. Kanai, however, is completely starstruck, thrilled to meet the hero she admires most. She explains that Sage was the one who inspired her to become a mage. After she fell into a hole when she was just a little girl, trapped and alone, she was cornered by two terrifying monsters. One of the beasts lunged forward, ready to strike her down. She could only scream, bracing for the inevitable end. But in that moment of absolute terror, something changed. The monster was frozen solid as a voice told her not to cry. And there stood Sage Tetsu, her savior, radiating an aura of absolute power. He told her that if she became strong, she would never have to cry again. And in that moment, she decided she would become a licensed mage, just like him. Kuki listens to her story, a faint smile on his face. She then turns the question back to him, asking for his own motivation. His answer is simple and direct: to stop the end of the world. Kanai remembers his warning that the seven saviors would fail. She jokingly asks if he came from the future, a guess that hits far too close to home. But she quickly laughs it off, attributing his knowledge and power to his amazing new skill. He finally confesses the truth, that he's experienced the future 5 years from now. He even reveals he was supposed to die on the day the world ended, leaving Kanai in utter shock. Kuki asks her to listen seriously, to believe a story that sounds impossible. She struggles to process his words, her mind reeling from the unbelievable claim. But seeing the look on his face, she realizes he's telling the absolute truth. He simply confirms her dawning realization with a grim look in his eyes. She asks if he's seen it, if even the number one savior is destined to fail. His mind flashes back to the hellscape he alone remembers, to the saviors broken and defeated. He clenches his fist, explaining that one strong person isn't enough to change their fate. His words strike a chord with Kanai, who now understands his true purpose. He explains that he felt he could trust her because she's the first true comrade he's ever made. Kanai is moved by his words, offering him a bright and heartfelt thank you. But she wonders why he doesn't tell everyone, suggesting more people might believe his story. Kuki explains that regression is an ancient and powerful magic, one that isn't even widely known. He fears that if its existence were revealed, his sister could become a target. Understanding the weight of his secret, she asks what their plan is from here. Kuki clenches his fist, declaring that he will become stronger, which is why he became a licensed mage. He believes that if he can gather more allies, he can definitely change the future. The scene shifts to a peaceful forest under a bright, clear sky, and a lone figure walks through the sun-dappled woods, stepping into a new day. And so, Kuki and Kanai were assigned to the same squad, their days as licensed mages finally beginning. His mind drifts back to her question of what comes next. His answer was simple: to become stronger, the very reason he became a mage. He knows that with more comrades like her, he can definitely change the future. A new day dawns on their new lives, and their first mission as a team begins. As fate would have it, he and Kanai were placed on the same team, and their journey as official mages starts now. They're joined by two other mages, standing at the edge of a massive rift. One of the veterans smirks, asking the rookies if this is their first time in a hole. Kuki admits that while he's fought in simulations, this is his first time facing real monsters. One of the veterans reassures him that this is a beginner-friendly dungeon, and they just need to follow their lead. Kuki and Kanai nervously agree, ready to begin their first mission. With a confident shout, the veteran leaps down into the rift. The entire team follows, descending into the monster-filled chasm below. The standard procedure is for rookies to observe their seniors fighting low-rank monsters to gain experience. But one of the veterans notes that the sheer number of enemies is unusual. He calls out to the rookies, telling them to handle a few that have slipped past. Kuki and Kanai ready their skills, their expressions hardening with focus. They unleash their attacks in perfect sync, easily dispatching the low-level threats. One of the veterans is impressed by their skill, but Kuki insists he can do much more. The other senior advises him not to rush, explaining it's important to get used to real combat slowly. But Kuki ignores the advice, ready to show them what he's truly capable of. He unleashes a devastating combination of fire and thorns that rips through the entire swarm of monsters. Kanai is thrilled by his new technique, leaving the two veterans completely speechless. Kuki feels a strange energy flowing through him, a new sensation of power. It's explained that defeating monsters allows a mage to absorb their power and level up. But Kuki realizes that these C-rank monsters give too little experience to make him truly stronger. He peeks over a ledge, already looking for a greater challenge. But just then, the rift begins to close as Kanai celebrates their return to the surface. Kanai is thrilled with their performance, asking Kuki how he felt about their first mission. But Kuki seems far from satisfied, his expression grim. He declares that he wants to challenge much higher-level rifts immediately. His sudden intensity leaves Kanai looking on with concern. One of the veterans admits that Kuki's skills were certainly impressive, but warns that raw power isn't everything when it comes to fighting real monsters. The senior's words seem to hit Kuki hard, a stark reminder of his inexperience. Later, as they eat, Kanai complains about the cafeteria being sold out of her favorite food. Kuki quietly admits that he understands what their seniors were trying to tell him. He knows the monsters of the future can't be beaten with flashy tricks, and that he needs to build his experience steadily. Kanai explains that the world of licensed mages is strictly hierarchical. Kuki understands, but she can tell he's still feeling the pressure of his deadline. He lays out his plan, knowing he has 4 years and 10 months until the end. His first goal is to gather more trustworthy comrades, just like her. Kanai agrees, munching on her lunch as she takes in his words. Second, he needs to gain status, to become a hero the world will actually listen to. Otherwise, they'll all just keep their blind faith in the 7 saviors. Third, he must copy as many useful skills as he can, from defensive barriers to healing magic. Kanai listens intently, asking what his fourth and final goal is, and he declares that he himself must become stronger than anyone strong enough to defeat the monsters that even the number 1 savior couldn't stop. His fist tightens, a silent testament to his growing frustration. He knows that at this rate, he'll never be strong enough to change the future. But Kanai chimes in with a thought of her own. She explains that mages who become as strong as the saviors can skip promotions entirely. The idea catches him completely off guard, a new path suddenly opening up. He realizes that if he could do that, he could challenge high-level rifts right away. And the fastest way to do that is to be recognized by the 7 saviors themselves. Elsewhere, the saviors have gathered for a meeting of their own. The 5th savior, Ashiya Hikaru, asks what they're all here to discuss. And the 2nd savior, Jumon Seijiro, reveals the topic is the rookie, Ikuta Kuki. The 4th savior, Kyoki Ranbu, refers to Kuki as the brat who defeated their spoiled boy. Ashiya explains that Kuki started with a simple thorn skill, but then displayed several others. The 3rd savior, Igawe Himeka, questions the very idea of a single person having multiple skills. As the 6th savior expresses her boredom, Ashiya confirms it's a feat no ordinary human can perform. All eyes turn to the strongest of them all, Sage Tetsu, as they ask for his thoughts. But the hero simply stands, his body erupting with a chilling, powerful aura. Just then, the doors to their private meeting swing open, revealing Kuki himself. The saviors can only stare in utter disbelief at the boy's impossible intrusion. Sage turns to face him, a blade of pure ice forming in his hand. He recognizes Kuki as the others demand to know how he unlocked their high-security door. Kuki reveals the golden crest on his hand, the very skill he used to get inside. The saviors recognize the lightning attribute as they demand to know what he wants. He looks them in the eye, stating that he's come with a request. The tycoon, Jumon Seijiro, watches on with a dismissive gaze. And then Kuki makes his demand, asking to join the 7 saviors. His voice is firm, repeating that he has a proposition for them. Jumon's expression remains cold and unimpressed by the boy's audacity. The declaration sends a wave of shock through the other heroes. Jumon scoffs at the idea, questioning if he thinks he can just take Leo's place. Ashiya then reminds him of his own words, that the saviors are destined to fail. Kuki explains that joining them is a shortcut to becoming an S-rank mage and challenging stronger dungeons. Ashiya confirms that the skip promotion system is indeed real. But he notes that even the world's strongest took 6 months to reach S-rank, while Kuki is a brand new mage. Kuki clenches his fist, insisting that he has to get stronger as quickly as possible. But Kyoki Ranbu explodes with rage, calling him a cocky brat for defeating their spoiled boy. He lectures that mages are supposed to gain experience gradually, not rush to the top. The muscular savior prepares to strike, ready to beat some sense into him as Ashiya tries to intervene. But Ashiya has a theory, suspecting Kuki can copy skills after taming Leo's phantom beast. Kuki's eyes narrow, realizing his secret is being pieced together. The revelation leaves Kyoki completely stunned, unable to believe such a power could exist. Ashiya finds this revelation fascinating, while the others note the danger of showing off such a skill. But Jumon simply dismisses him, telling the C-rank mage that today is not a good day. Kuki realizes his plan to copy one of their skills has failed, and decides it's time to move on to his final plan. A massive surge of energy erupts from his body. The saviors are stunned by the sheer scale of his magic power. Even the strongest among them, Sage Tetsu, seems to take notice. Kyoki Ranbu roars in defiance, questioning if Kuki intends to fight them all. But instead of attacking, Kuki suddenly bows deeply, leaving the saviors completely baffled. He declares that he's taken their words to heart and will now train diligently to reform his attitude. He thanks Kyoki for the harsh words, claiming they've truly hit home. With his apology delivered, Kuki turns to leave the room. But the muscular savior calls out to him, just as Kuki had hoped. Kyoki admits that for a rookie, Kuki has impressive power and surprisingly good manners. Kuki plays the part of the humble student, insisting he still has much to learn. The savior then asks why he's so desperate to become stronger. Kuki hesitates for a moment, a pained look on his face. He then reveals the truth that his sister has collapsed and is in the hospital. He wants to become a mage she can be proud of, a sentiment that moves the emotional savior to tears. And as he speaks of his sister, Kuki's own eyes well up with genuine emotion. The emotional savior is completely won over, promising to give Kuki special training himself. They head to the grand arena, where Kyoki explains his skill is called Absolute Barrier. Kuki thinks to himself that he's researched all the saviors, and this is the skill he wanted most to protect people. The savior's hand glows as he prepares to demonstrate his power. He slams his palm to the ground, summoning a massive wall of resolve. Kyoki then challenges Kuki to try and break through it. Kuki's hand transforms, encased in a hardened, rocky shell. He activates his iron body skill and charges forward with all his might. His fist connects with the barrier in a brilliant flash of light, but the wall doesn't even crack, completely nullifying his attack. Kuki is thrown back, stunned by the force of his own reflected attack. The barrier sends him flying, the impact echoing his own power. Kyoki explains that the wall reflects the exact damage it receives, but it can be destroyed if Kuki is willing to pay the price. The savior challenges him to try, if he has the resolve to face his own power. He even offers to take Kuki into his squad into S-rank dungeons if he succeeds. Kuki's hand glows as he prepares to unleash the binding skill he's been practicing. He fuses Fuma and Fireball, creating a massive spectral tiger wreathed in flames. The savior stares in shock, realizing Kuki is combining Leo's skill with another. He can't comprehend what kind of power our boy truly possesses. Kuki commands his phantom beast to unleash its full power. The creature lets out a devastating roar of pure flame. The savior can only stare in disbelief as his barrier shatters in a single hit. Kuki braces himself for the reflected damage he was warned about, but is surprised to find that the pain never comes. Kyoki explains that the wall has a hidden rule. It doesn't harm those with the resolve to destroy it in one blow. He looks at Kuki with a newfound respect, admitting he's the first to ever succeed. Our boy can't help but smile, his plan having worked perfectly. But the savior isn't done yet, summoning an even more powerful barrier. Kuki's eyes widen with excitement, ready for the next phase of his training. Kyoki asks if Kuki managed to copy his skill, and our boy confirms he now holds the absolute barrier. The savior agrees to share his power, confident that a copy could never surpass the original. But his expression hardens as he asks if Kuki's distrust extends to the entire Ministry of Magic. Kuki hesitates, his mind flashing back to the savior's brutal defeat in the future he remembers. But Kyoki's next words leave him stunned, as the savior admits he feels the very same way. He explains the ministry has been acting strange, and Kuki realizes he may have just found a powerful new ally. But as he tries to speak, a blade suddenly erupts from the savior's chest. Kyoki can only gasp in pain, his face a mask of pure shock. Kuki stares in utter horror, his mind unable to process the sudden betrayal. And behind the fallen hero stands the great archmage, the very man who delivered the prophecy. The man responsible for the prophecy, the head of the Ministry of Magic himself, the one who used his ancient magic to see the future, and the very man who chose the 7 saviors. And now that same man stands over the body of a fallen hero. Kuki can only stare, his mind reeling as he calls out his new mentor's name. But the powerful savior can't even move, paralyzed by the sudden attack. The prophet raises his blade again, his cold eyes now fixed on Kuki. But Kuki reacts in an instant, summoning the very skill he just acquired. Kyoki throws himself in front of the boy, taking the full force of the blow. Kuki can't understand why this is happening as he unleashes a skill of his own. He unleashes his thorn user skill, sending massive vines to bind the old man. But the prophet's eyes glow, activating his own ability to see the future. He sidesteps every single attack with impossible perfect precision. Kuki realizes in frustration that he's fighting someone who can read his every move. The prophet continues to evade, but feels a strange sensation as he does. Kuki notices that his opponent's movements are strangely unnatural. He thinks they're almost inhuman, too perfect to be real. And then the prophet's form begins to glitch like a corrupted file. Kuki can only stare, completely baffled by what he's seeing. The prophet's head vanishes in a cloud of digital static, revealing something else entirely. The thorny vines retract as Kuki stands his ground, the battle finally over. The scene shifts to the ministry's morgue, where Kuki kneels beside his fallen mentor. He apologizes, filled with regret that he couldn't save the man who believed in him. But through his grief, a question he's always had begins to surface. He wonders how the great Archmage could foresee the end of the world, but somehow failed to see the Savior's ultimate defeat. A chilling possibility takes root. What if the prophet saw it all along? What if his vision of the future was never incomplete? He realizes the Archmage must have known from the very beginning that the 7 saviors would fail, which leaves only one question: why would he create a false prophecy in the first place? He pulls out his phone, a single red dot marking his target's location. He remembers the skill he used during their brief, chaotic battle, a strange liquid-like substance that clung to the prophet's clothes. It was a tracking skill, a sticky bullet he'd planted during the fight, and now he's determined to follow that signal to its source and demand the truth from the man who orchestrated everything. The tracker leads him to a heavily fortified, almost prison-like building. Barbed wire and concrete walls suggest this place is not meant to be found. He slips inside, peering cautiously into a brightly lit room. But what he finds is a strange lab, filled with rows of futuristic capsules. He wonders what the great Archmage is doing in a place like this. The prophet lunges forward, his blade crackling with a familiar purple energy. Kuki grabs a nearby pipe and activates his iron body skill, hardening it into a makeshift weapon. He parries the attack, the clash of steel and magic echoing through the lab. The Archmage's eyes narrow, his perfect predictions suddenly failing him. Kuki presses his advantage, meeting every single one of the prophet's strikes. The old man seems to wonder why his future sight is no longer working. Kuki reveals that he copied the prophet's skill during their last encounter, and now that their powers are interfering, the Archmage's vision is completely clouded. With the playing field finally leveled, Kuki unleashes a furious counterattack. Kuki presses his attack, demanding to know what the prophet truly saw. Their weapons clash, a battle of truth against deception. He questions how the Archmage could see the end, but not the Savior's failure. He accuses the old man of knowing that hell was coming, and wonders if he deliberately orchestrated the entire tragedy. The memory of his sister's sacrifice fuels his righteous fury. With a roar of pure rage, he declares that he will never forgive him. He swings his makeshift weapon with all the strength he can muster. The prophet's face contorts as the blow lands with a sickening impact, and his body begins to dissolve, torn apart by a strange, dark substance. Kuki stares in shock, realizing the substance isn't blood but mud. A new voice confirms his suspicion as Kuki stands on guard. The voice explains that the great Archmage is and has been already dead, and the man behind it all is none other than the 5th savior, Ashia Hikaru. Kuki can only stare in disbelief, demanding to know why he's here.
Ashia simply mocks him for being so slow to catch on.
He reveals his skill, Mud Puppet, which allows him to control corpses at will, and he proudly declares that the prophet everyone trusted has been his puppet all along. The revelation hits Kuki like a physical blow, his mind reeling in horror. He realizes that if the prophet was a puppet, then the prophecy itself was a complete fabrication. Ashia admits with a smug smile that he made the prophet deliver the prophecy. His true goal was to ensure the world would be properly destroyed. Kuki can only stare in horror, his rage boiling over at the betrayal. The savior explains that the apocalypse was inevitable, an event that couldn't be hidden. So he had the prophet announce it first, fabricating false saviors to build a lie. When the masses heard from the trusted Archmage that 7 heroes would save them, humanity let its guard down completely, lost in a false sense of hope. And by doing so, he could ensure the world's destruction would be absolute. He repeats that by making them complacent, he could hold their entire fate in his hands, ready to crush it completely. Ashia's goal was to ensure the world would be destroyed more reliably. Kuki can only stare, struggling to comprehend the twisted logic. The savior explains that the end of the world must happen, as it is their will. But before Kuki can even ask who he's talking about, Ashia reveals he killed the real Archmage just to spread a lie and make humanity feel safe. The sheer scale of the deception leaves Kuki completely horrified. He can't believe that one man could be capable of such a monstrous plan. He realizes that the prophecy that shaped the last 5 years and the hell that followed were all orchestrated by the man standing before him. Ashia even boasts about making himself the 5th savior, just to make his plan easier to execute. Ashia notes that Kuki knows the truth about the savior's failure, and calls his attempts to save the world a major inconvenience. The words leave Kuki completely stunned, as a strange, dark mud erupts from the ground. From the mud, dozens of puppets begin to take shape, their faces twisted in silent, empty screams. Ashia reveals he's been collecting the bodies of fallen mages and asks if Kuki can defeat them all. With a furious roar, Kuki tells him to stop messing around. He slams his fist into the ground, demanding to know why he's so obsessed with the world's destruction. But Ashia just smiles, dismissing the question entirely since Kuki is about to die anyway. Kuki faces the horde of puppets, his expression hardening for the fight ahead. The crest on his hand begins to glow as he prepares to unleash his bind skill. He fuses gravity manipulation and fireball, engulfing the puppets in a fiery vortex. But Ashia is thrilled by the display, marveling at Kuki's ability to combine skills. The savior's curiosity turns sinister, wondering what makes Kuki's body so special. He pulls out a syringe, deciding to add our boy to his twisted collection. But instead of attacking, he injects the strange substance into his own neck. His body contorts and expands, enhanced by the very mud he controls. Kuki is stunned as Ashia reveals his mud can also empower the living. And with a surge of new strength, the savior lunges forward to demonstrate his power. Kuki realizes he's on the defensive, worried his magic will run out. Ashia taunts him, expecting a much greater display of power. The savior unleashes his own bind skill, a fusion of future sight and absolute barrier. A smug smile spreads across Ashia's face as he understands Kuki's predicament. Kuki realizes his opponent has created an auto barrier that predicts and blocks every move. The barrier effortlessly deflects Kuki's attack, sending Ashia reeling but unharmed. The savior mocks him, confident that Kuki will be the first to run out of strength. Again, the golden shield holds firm against our boy's relentless assault. But Kuki unleashes a new power, a surge of green energy from his hand. The attack slams into Ashia, who can only stare in shock at this third, unexpected skill. Ashia winces, caught completely off guard by the force of this new attack. He marvels at Kuki's ability to predict, defend, and counterattack all at the same time. Kuki demands to know what he is and why he's so obsessed with the world's end. Ashia decides that out of respect for his strength, he'll finally reveal the truth. He explains the apocalypse is a ritual for monsters from another dimension to devour worlds rich in magic. In fact, he reveals that those very monsters are the ones who gave magic to humanity in the first place. The horrifying realization begins to dawn on Kuki. Ashia confirms it with a smug grin, explaining they seeded the world with magic so they could one day invade. Humanity was never blessed with power. They were being fattened up like livestock for the slaughter. And with a cold, detached gaze, he asks if Kuki is really okay with that. Kuki screams at him, asking how a human could ever accept such a fate. But with a terrifying smile, Ashia asks when he ever claimed to be human. The words leave Kuki completely frozen in shock. Ashia's body begins to contort and expand with a surge of dark energy. His eyes glow with an inhuman, predatory light. Massive golden wings erupt from his back, tearing through his clothes. He removes his glasses, his face twisting into a monstrous grin. His entire form shifts and grows, becoming something else entirely. Kuki can only stare up in disbelief, his mind struggling to comprehend the sight. And before him looms the savior's true form, a terrifying winged beast. Kuki is completely frozen, his mind struggling to process this new, horrifying truth. His mind flashes back to the day the world ended, to the moment Leo shoved his sister forward as a decoy. He remembers watching her take the full force of the monster's attack. The memory of his own helpless scream echoes in his mind. He recalls the savior's cowardly retreat, proudly proclaiming his own importance. Leo's cruel words ring in his ears, that his life was more valuable than hers. He remembers begging his sister to hold on, her life slipping away. And he remembers the monster that loomed over them both in her final moments. A horrifying realization dawns on him. Ashia's form is the same as the beast from that day. The monster confirms it, declaring that chosen ones like him will live on by devouring humanity. Kuki collapses to his knees, his mind completely shattered by the truth. His eyes are wide with a horror that transcends time itself. Ashia mocks him, congratulating him for making it this far before his end. His mind is thrown back to that day, to the moment Leo shoved his sister forward, using her as a shield to take the full force of the monster's attack. He remembers his own helpless scream, unable to comprehend the betrayal. He recalls Leo's cowardly retreat, proudly proclaiming his status as a savior. The hero's cruel words echo in his mind, that his own life was far more valuable. He remembers begging his sister to hold on as her life slipped away. And back in the present, that same raw horror fills his eyes once more. Ashia mocks his fear, offering a final, condescending praise for his efforts. And with a final goodbye, the monster unleashes a devastating blast of energy. Kuki can only look up, his body frozen but his will still defiant. He's completely out of magic, his body refusing to move as his future sight drains him. He can feel his power rapidly fading, the cost of seeing the future too great. But a strange, ancient crest suddenly appears in his mind's eye. He reaches out, desperately trying to summon his absolute barrier, refusing to die here. And in that moment, a new, unfamiliar mark glows on the back of his hand. But his magic won't come out, his body failing him at the last second. The attack slams into the ground, engulfing everything in a cataclysmic explosion. But in his final moments, he's pulled back into his mental library, where the librarian asks about his true skill. She smiles, explaining that his current power is just a pale imitation, a borrowed strength with inherent binding limits. She reveals that his own true skill is something far, far greater. The revelation leaves Kuki completely stunned. He realizes he has a power that is truly his own, and eagerly asks how to use it. The librarian explains the condition to unlock his first true skill is to activate 7 different skills all at the same time. The impossible requirement leaves him speechless, but she explains that every skill he's collected is a key to unlocking that very power. She explains that the key to his true power is using 7 skills simultaneously, an act that will finally open the crest on his hand. Kuki can hardly believe it, the number 7 echoing in his mind. He's only ever managed to use 2 skills at the same time. The librarian warns that using 7 would drain his magic in an instant. His power would drop to almost nothing in a single moment. And that is precisely why this new power has a very specific condition. It's a magic that can only be used once, when his power is at its absolute peak. Back in reality, he desperately tries to summon his absolute barrier, but his body is too weak, the magic refusing to answer his call. Kuki reaches out, his face a mask of pure desperation. He pleads for any power that can save him, just for this one moment. A desperate thought echoes his own as someone races to his side. And in a flash of motion, Kanai tackles him to the ground, shoving him out of the path of the devastating blast. He looks up at his friend, who breathes a sigh of relief that she made it in time. But her relief quickly turns to anger as she asks why he sent her his location. Koki can only admit that he did, a grim look on his face. He explains it was a backup plan just in case something went wrong. But now they both face the monster, realizing the enemy is far more dangerous than either of them imagined. Kuki tries to stop her, explaining he's out of magic and she can't fight alone. But Kanai summons a fireball, not for an attack, but to shove it directly into Kuki's chest. Ashiya mocks their apparent infighting, finding the desperate display beautiful. But Kuki is enveloped in a warm, restorative energy. Kanai reveals her new skill, a healing fireball, declaring she'd never abandon a comrade. Kuki is stunned as he feels his own magic power rapidly returning. She turns to face the monster, asking if he can win now that he's back at full strength. He can only ask when she learned such an incredible new technique. Her mind flashes back to a time when she was just as determined, but far weaker. She tells him she'll explain everything after he beats this monster. Ashiya is thrilled, recognizing a rare healing magic user he must add to his collection. Kuki thanks his friend, feeling his strength and resolve returning in full. His mind flashes back to the hellscape of the future, realizing things are different this time. He remembers the humiliation of his past, when he was powerless to even stop a bully. A time when he couldn't use magic and was constantly tormented by the very people whose skills he now wields. He's no longer the weak boy who always needed his sister to save him, because now he has a comrade he can truly trust. And with that trust, he finally has a power that is all his own. Ashiya in his monster form gathers a devastating blast of red energy. He boasts that his body is a gift from the gods, granting him immunity to any magic he's hit with and the ability to regenerate unless he's defeated in a single blow. He knows every skill Kuki possesses, and is certain that none of them are strong enough to take him down in one hit. But Kuki's eyes are cold with resolve as the crest on his hand begins to glow with an otherworldly light. He calls upon the 7 skills he's collected, the keys to unlocking his true power. Ashiya unleashes his attack, screaming that any resistance is completely useless. But Kuki stands firm, a strange, dark barrier forming to protect both him and Kanai. The monster can only stare in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend how his attack was blocked. He rants that it should be impossible for human magic to stop a being from the other side. But on Kuki's hand is a new mark, a black ancient crest that signals the awakening of a power beyond human comprehension. With the dark crest glowing on his hand, Kuki vows to defeat him. He unleashes his first true skill, a power he calls Vanta Black. The attack reverts Ashiya back to his human form, leaving him defeated. The villain can only look up in agony, his power completely gone. He collapses to the ground, muttering that this should be impossible. Kuki turns to Kanai with a confident smile, thanking her for her help. But the victory is short-lived as a surge of dark energy erupts from his body. The strain of his new power is too much, and he collapses to his knees. He clutches his chest, the backlash of his own skill overwhelming him. Kanai can only cry out his name as he falls, the new crest still glowing on his hand. He feels the tremendous recoil, wondering about this strange, black, ancient magic. A power said to be extinct, one that only ancient mages like the great archmage could wield. Or those who read from a grimoire, a power that puts an immense strain on the body. His mind flashes back to the librarian's words that his own skill was far more powerful. He remembers asking how he could possibly use a magic that was truly his own. And now he wonders if this is the very skill she was talking about. Kanai rushes to his side, asking if he's all right as he struggles to his feet. Kuki clenches his fist, knowing he must master this new power to become even stronger. Elsewhere, the world is already reacting to the recent events. A news alert flashes across a phone, announcing that the Great Archmage has disappeared. The news that both Kyoki and the Great Archmage are missing sends a shockwave across the globe. And in a dark interrogation room, Ashiya sits bound in heavy chains. He's being questioned as the prime suspect in their disappearance, by none other than the third savior, Igawe Himeka, the head of the police. She presses him, asking if he's finally ready to talk. But Ashiya just offers a smug, knowing smile in response. She lays out the evidence. His mud was on the Archmage's body, and Kyoki was cut down by the Prophet's own blade. She then asks why he was found lying defeated at the scene of the crime. Ashiya simply plays dumb, offering no real answers. But Himeka's patience has run out, her own power beginning to flare. She warns that his bravado won't last long as her own power flares to life. She seems almost excited to finally unleash her abilities on him. A cruel smile spreads across her face as she plans her methodical interrogation. But even through the pain, Ashiya just smirks, impressed by her cruelty. Elsewhere, Kuki stands over the body of his fallen mentor. He quietly promises that he has finally avenged him. But the victory feels hollow as he looks upon Kyoki's still form. Suddenly, a new book appears in his mental library, catching him completely off guard. He recognizes it as the mud puppet skill he copied from Ashiya, but he's confused as to why it's only appearing now, learning it has a second, hidden use. He learns the first use was to control corpses, just as Ashiya had done. But the second hidden ability is called Soul Doll, a power to revive the dead. He realizes it can only be used once, and only on those killed by the mud puppet skill. A sudden impossible hope dawns on him if Kyoki was killed by the puppet. His mind flashes back to the moment his mentor was struck down by the false archmage, but he hesitates, knowing the terrible weight of failure if this doesn't work. He pushes his fear aside, knowing he has to at least try. Because if there's even the slightest chance to save him, he has to take it. With a surge of power, he activates the Soul Doll skill over Kyoki's body. And from a swirl of golden energy, a tiny version of the savior appears, his soul reborn. The white sheet covering his mentor's body begins to stir. Kuki can only watch, his heart pounding as he waits to see if the magic worked. And from under the cloth, a tiny head suddenly pops up. The doll-sized savior sits up, completely bewildered by his new surroundings. He looks up at Kuki, his mind struggling to understand why he's suddenly so small. Overcome with relief, Kuki scoops him up in a massive, tearful hug. Kanai is just as overjoyed, cheering at the impossible sight. Later, she holds the tiny hero up like a toy, gushing over how cute he is. But Kyoki is less than thrilled, reminding her that despite his new form, he's still her senior. The tiny savior crosses his arms, still trying to process his new, undignified reality. The tiny savior reflects on the incredible secrets the two rookies were hiding. He realizes the world was rotting from the inside, a truth he never saw. Kuki explains that to stop the end, they must defeat thousands of monsters as strong as Ashiya, and Kyoki realizes there could be many more traitors just like him. Kanai leaps to her feet, determined to train harder so she can be of more help. Kuki then asks the question on his mind, where she learned that healing skill. She smiles, ready to explain her own recent adventure. She reveals that while buying crepes, she ran into the sixth savior, Irori. Kyoki chimes in, noting the young genius's well-known love for sweets. And Kanai explains that the powerful savior actually helped her train her new ability. Her mind flashes back to the young savior, a fiery phoenix reflected in her eye. Irori had told her that she was using her own skill completely wrong. The sixth savior then demonstrated her own power, a brilliant blue flame. She explained that her flames could reveal the true nature of the skills sleeping inside people, and that Kanai's fireball was never meant to be an attack she threw at others. Its true form was a phoenix fireball, an ability that negates damage and heals people. The revelation left Kanai completely and utterly speechless. She explains that after that encounter, she practiced over and over again, and that's how she finally mastered the healing skill that saved Kuki's life. But Kuki notes that even though he copied her fireball, he can't seem to mimic its healing properties. Kyoki explains that this is likely a reverse skill, a concept that leaves Kuki completely confused. The tiny savior explains that skills have two sides, like luck and misfortune, which can reverse for long-time users. Just as Kanai's fireball became a healing ability, his own absolute barrier has an ultra-offensive reverse side. The idea sparks a new thought in Kuki's mind, that his own skill must have a reverse side as well. But his thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a dark, foreboding vision of his sister's hospital. A strange scene begins to play out in his mind, showing two men in military uniforms. They're standing over his sister's bed, their intentions completely unknown. Kuki leaps to his feet in a panic, calling out his sister's name and startling Kanai. He looks down at his hand, the dark crest glowing with a faint, ominous light. He realizes this is his future sight skill, and that if he does nothing, this vision will become reality. Without another word, Kuki breaks into a desperate sprint, leaving his friends behind. He knows with absolute certainty that his sister is in grave danger. Kanai races to catch up, and he confirms there's no doubt about the future he saw. His vision shows the two men in military uniforms standing outside the medical center. He knows that if he doesn't get there in time, the horrifying future he witnessed will become reality. The thought of what might happen to her fuels his desperate sprint. Above the hospital, the two men float before a dark, swirling vortex. One of the men seems eager for a fight, but the other dismisses him, focused on their mission. And in his vision, he sees his sister being taken away from her hospital room. The vision becomes reality as the two men float outside his sister's window. One of them lands softly inside the room. He leans over Mickey, announcing that he's come to take her away. And just like that, they lift her into the air, complaining about their boring job as they head for the vortex. But a furious voice cuts through the air, telling them to wait. Kuki arrives just in the nick of time, blocking their escape. He immediately activates his bind skill, fusing gravity and fireball, and unleashes the very same meteor shower that defeated a savior. But the blonde-haired man simply raises a finger, telling him to hold on, and with a single gesture, the entire barrage is nullified in a massive explosion. Kuki can only stare in disbelief, his most powerful attack completely erased. The blonde-haired man casually asks what's wrong, as if he hasn't just kidnapped a helpless girl. But Kuki's shock turns to pure rage as he demands they give his sister back. The silver-haired man seems amused, noting that Kuki arrived almost as if he foresaw their arrival. Kuki hovers in the air, demanding to know who these mysterious men are. But the silver-haired man has a sudden realization, connecting Mickey to the regression magic. He then asks if Kuki is also the one who managed to defeat Ashia. Kuki roars back, demanding to know if they're allies of the traitorous savior. But the blonde man scoffs at the idea, calling Ashia a pathetic loser they'd never work with. Kuki doesn't care about their allegiances, lunging forward with one goal in mind, to get his sister back. The silver-haired man explains that Mickey is an important key for them as well. And with a simple snap of his fingers, he unleashes a terrifying new power. From the vortex, a horde of demonic monsters begins to pour into the city. On the ground, Kanai and Kyoki can only stare in horror at the impossible sight. The tiny savior notes that monsters appearing directly in the city is unprecedented. And worse, every single one of them radiates the power of an S-rank beast. Kuki can only watch, his expression hardening as the situation grows more dire. He knows with absolute certainty that these two are connected to the end of the world. He unleashes a new bind skill, tearing through one of the monsters with hardened thorns. His eyes burn with rage as he vows to never forgive anyone who dares to hurt his sister. But the silver-haired man drops a bombshell, claiming Mickey isn't his sister at all. The words leave Kuki completely frozen in disbelief. He insists that Mickey is their comrade, a statement that makes no sense to our boy. He explains that she has a job to do, a mission Kuki knows nothing about. The foundation of his entire world begins to crack beneath him. The blonde man just laughs, mocking their entire relationship as a childish game. But Kuki's shock turns to a cold, simmering rage as he tells them to stop. His mind flashes back to all the times she supported him, the only one who ever did. Her kind, unwavering smile was the reason he never gave up. And with all the fury in his soul, he screams that she is his sister, unleashing his power. He calls upon the 7 skills he's collected, the keys to his true power, and unleashes his first true skill, a devastating wave of extreme black light. The blonde-haired man is caught completely off guard by the sudden attack. and is sent flying backwards, engulfed by the strange, dark energy. Down below, Kanai and Kyoki can only brace themselves against the shockwave. But his silver-haired partner seems completely unfazed by the display of power. The blonde man recovers in mid-air, his own body now glowing with a red aura. Kuki can only stare in disbelief, realizing his ultimate attack had no effect. His opponent just laughs, revealing a familiar ancient crest on his own hand. A horrifying realization dawns on Kuki. He's facing another user of ancient magic. The blonde man grins, his hands tingling with the thrill of a real fight. He decides to play with Kuki, lunging forward with a battle-crazed look. But Kuki is paralyzed by the recoil of his own power, his body racked with pain. Kanai looks on with concern, questioning if he can handle such dangerous magic. The silver-haired man decides they can't play anymore, pulling his partner and Mickey into the vortex. He offers a final, chilling promise that they will meet again. As the vortex closes, Kuki's strength finally gives out, and he begins to plummet helplessly towards the ground below. But as he falls, a new, unfamiliar crest of light appears on his hand, and his body goes limp, his consciousness fading as he hurtles towards the earth. The new crest on his hand glows with a soft, ethereal light. His mind drifts back to a gentle voice from his past, telling him he could do anything. But the memory twists into a nightmare, her encouraging words turning into a sinister promise. Kuki jolts awake with a gasp, his heart pounding in his chest. He finds himself in a hospital bed, with Kanai calling out his name in relief. The tiny savior explains that he collapsed after the fight, and Kanai's healing saved him from the brink. But his mind snaps back to the two men and their outrageous claim about his sister. He tries to force himself out of bed, desperate to save her from their clutches. But Kanai holds him back, insisting he's in no condition to fight anyone. She pleads with him, terrified of what will happen if he uses that dangerous new power again. Kyoki reminds him that even his ultimate attack was completely useless against them. But Kuki can only think of his sister, terrified of what will happen to her at their hands. The tiny savior lays down a harsh truth. If he can't save the world, he can't save her either. He insists that first, Kuki must learn to properly control his dangerous new skill. He needs to find a way to wield its power without it destroying him from the inside. Because if he can't master it, he'll never be strong enough to get his sister back. Kuki takes the words to heart, realizing he needs a teacher to guide him. And Kanai suddenly has an idea, knowing the perfect person to help the one who unlocked her own hidden potential. The scene shifts as the third savior, Igawe Himeka, bursts into a formal meeting. She's interrupting a gathering of some of the world's most powerful figures. The man explains that the ministry needs someone to keep a close eye on Kuki. Himeka immediately volunteers, feeling responsible for bringing him into their world. The man asks for Seige's opinion, but the hero just stands, telling them to do as they please. And with that, the strongest savior simply walks out of the room. But another man at the table smirks, finding this situation very convenient. He rants about his hatred for young people who don't respect their elders. And with a cruel grin, he decides he'll just eliminate the problem himself. But a young man with blue hair stands in his way, his own power flaring to life. He holds up a hand, ready to stop the man's reckless attack. Meanwhile, Kanai pleads with the sixth savior to analyze Kuki's skill, just as she did for her. Kanai pleads with the sixth savior, who seems reluctant to be disturbed. But Irori agrees to help, but only for the price of a single crepe. Kanai is overjoyed, scooping the young savior up in a grateful hug. Kuki notes how surprising it is to see the reclusive genius helping someone else. Irori summons her signature blue flame, ready to analyze Kuki's new skill. But as her power touches his, it's met with a dark, chaotic energy that leaves her stunned. She tells them that his power is pitch black, that she can't see anything at all. Her vision is filled with a dark, unknown power, a force she can't comprehend. Kanai worries as Irori suggests that if she can't see it, Kuki must go see it himself. The young savior then summons a new green flame, preparing to send him on that very journey. She explains that her green flame will guide Kuki into his own mental world, where he can finally see the true nature of his skill with his own eyes. Kuki's eyes snap open as the power takes hold. He finds himself back in his mental library, completely bewildered. He knows this is where his skill resides, but something feels terribly wrong. He then sees a figure lying on the ground, completely unconscious. He recognizes the librarian, but his attention is drawn to a dark silhouette in the distance. The mysterious figure calls out to him, asking why he's come, leaving Kuki completely stunned. The figure then reveals a shocking truth that he is the old Kuki, the version of himself from before he had any magic, when he was bullied by everyone. Kuki stares in disbelief, realizing he's face to face with his younger self. The younger Kuki speaks with a cold, knowing tone, noting that a skill has finally awakened. He even seems impressed by the power Kuki now wields. On the ground, the librarian struggles to warn him about his true skill, but the younger Kuki silences her with a single brutal stomp. He then reveals that Kuki's true skill is the power to create. He holds up a glowing grimoire, calling it the first ancient magic ever to exist. The revelation leaves Kuki completely speechless, his mind reeling. The younger version explains that skills are shaped by a mage's desires and feelings, and that the copy ability was just a phase to gather materials for the true power, the ability to create magic unique to him. The younger Kuki asks what he wants to do with a magic that is truly his own. He asks what kind of magic Kuki always wanted, what he truly desired to become. He reminds Kuki that he's always been envious of everyone else's magic. He recalls Kuki's desperate wish to have every skill he saw for himself. A desire born from the hope that he could become the greatest mage of all. Kuki tries to deny it, but his younger self presses on, reminding him he needs to be strong, because otherwise, he'll never be able to save his sister. He insists that Kuki has the power to become stronger than anyone, as long as he truly wishes for it. Kuki's eyes glow with a dark power as he awakens his second true skill, Vanta Black Eyes, and the very fabric of his mental library begins to warp and change in response. The very books that once defined him begin to warp and change. His younger self declares that he's no longer a powerless failure, because now every magic is his to command. Kuki stands in the center of it all, a dark power swirling at his feet. Back in the real world, just moments before, Irori had sent him on this journey. But a new figure arrives on the scene, his expression grim. Kanai can only watch over Kuki's body, hoping he makes it back safely. But their vigil is shattered by a sudden, explosive attack. The tiny Kyoki leaps into action, summoning his absolute barrier to protect them. The attacker is the man from the ministry, unleashing a furious blast of lightning. The tiny savior is sent flying, completely overwhelmed by the force of the attack. The attacker smirks, recognizing Kyoki's impressive durability. Kanai and Irori can only stare in shock, recognizing the second savior, Jumon. Jumon unleashes a storm of lightning, mocking how pathetic the saviors have become. Kyoki demands to know what he wants, and Jumon declares he's here to take Kuki into custody. But his sinister grin reveals a much darker plan, musing about accidentally ending Kuki's life. The tiny savior leaps into action, entrusting Kuki's protection to the others. But Jumon vanishes in a flash of speed, leaving Kyoki to strike at empty air. The tiny hero's kick is met with a blinding blast of pure lightning. Kyoki struggles to keep up, completely unable to see his opponent's movements. Jumon boasts about his skill, a lightning speed that the naked eye can't possibly follow. He lands a devastating blow on the tiny savior, declaring him no match in his current form. But Kyoki struggles to his feet, vowing to protect the life that Kuki saved for him. Just then, Kuki's eyes snap open, glowing with a dark, unfamiliar power. A strange, shadowy energy erupts from his body, startling both Kanai and Irori. Kanai can only call out his name, shocked that he's finally woken up. Kuki floats into the air, his second true skill now fully activated. He's wreathed in a dark aura, his eyes glowing with the power of the extreme black eyes. Kanai can only stare in disbelief at the sheer pressure radiating from him. She and Irori are suddenly forced to their knees as their own magic is drained away. Jumon realizes in horror that Kuki's new skill indiscriminately copies the skills of those around him, and even absorbs their magic power as his own. The tiny savior can only stare, wondering what has happened to Kuki. All around them, people begin to feel dizzy and weak. Kyoki realizes with dawning horror that Kuki is stealing magic from everyone. Kuki simply confirms it, his expression cold and distant. His mind flashes back to the men who took his sister, knowing he can't defeat them as he is. He declares that he will take everyone's power to become the strongest. But Kanai cries out his name, begging him to stop this madness. Jumon just smirks, declaring that Kuki is far too dangerous to be left alive. He decides to eliminate the threat, pulling out a pack of strange pills. Kyoki recognizes it as an S-rank enhancer that boosts magic power 100-fold. The savior's eyes glow with a terrifying, overwhelming power, and with a furious roar, he unleashes a devastating blast of lightning. But the attack is stopped cold, much to the savior's surprise. Kuki stands completely unfazed, calling the hero a fake who can't even touch him. He unleashes a new bind skill, and dark vortexes begin to fill the sky. It's a power that seems to warp the very fabric of reality itself. And from those portals, every skill Kuki has ever copied is unleashed all at once. The second savior is engulfed in the chaotic storm of magic, his body torn apart by the relentless assault. He can only scream in disbelief, completely overwhelmed by this impossible power. Kuki then unleashes his first true skill, a devastating wave of extreme black light. The attack leaves Juman broken and defeated on the ground as Kuki floats above him. The tiny savior is stunned, wondering how Kuki can use such a technique without any recoil. Kanai realizes he's compensating by using the very magic he's stolen from everyone around them. She looks on with a pained expression, asking if this is truly his answer. She pleads with him, insisting that becoming strong this way isn't like him at all. But Kuki's expression remains cold and distant, lost in his own dark power. Kanai can only watch in despair, realizing her words can no longer reach him. He declares he'll find his sister, using the magic she gave him as a beacon. He closes his eyes, focusing on that faint, familiar connection. With a manic grin, he reaches out, claiming he can finally see her. And with a surge of dark power, he tears open a rift in the sky. His friends can only stare in shock as Kanai vows to follow him. But Kuki turns to them with cold eyes, telling them they're in the way. His cruel dismissal leaves Kanai completely and utterly stunned. He leaps into the vortex as she screams, refusing to be left behind. She reaches out desperately, vowing that she won't let him go alone. The tiny Kyoki is pulled in right behind her, leaving Aurori to watch them vanish. Kuki's feet touch down in a strange, unfamiliar land. But he's not the only one to arrive, as Kanai is immediately confronted by a stern-looking man. His power flares to life, a clear and immediate threat. Elsewhere in a ruined city, the two kidnappers stand over Mickey's unconscious form. The blonde-haired man smirks, surprised to learn she was the one who used regression magic. His silver-haired partner seems less amused, noting that she also stole the book. He calls her a troublesome girl, her fate now completely in their hands. They've already begun a ritual, planning to use her remaining power to influence someone else. But their work is suddenly interrupted as they sense a new presence. A dark vortex tears open the sky, and the silver-haired man offers his partner the chance to greet their new guest. Kanai lands in the ruined world, pleading for Kuki to calm down and listen to them. But the ground around him shatters, a testament to the dark power he now wields. The blonde-haired man appears, thrilled that Kuki has entered their world on his own. Kuki just stares back, his expression cold and completely unreadable. The man grins, declaring this is perfect as he lunges forward, eager for a fight. He throws a punch wreathed in dark energy, and Kuki raises a hand to meet the blow. But the attack lands with brutal force, sending our boy reeling. The man reveals his skill, space transcendence, which lets him attack through portals. Fists emerge from all directions, pummeling Kuki in a relentless assault. The villain boasts that his attacks are too fast for Kuki to even fight back. The blonde-haired man stares in disbelief at his opponent. He can't believe that even after taking so many hits, Kuki hasn't flinched. But Kuki's only thought is to get his sister back, his voice filled with rage. He unleashes another devastating wave of his extreme black light. The villain struggles to block it, realizing Kuki is even stronger than before. Kuki gathers a new sphere of dark, chaotic energy in his hands. He slams it into the ground, unleashing its full, destructive power. The villain is sent flying backwards, caught in the blast. Kuki follows up with a brutal punch of his own that connects with a sickening, powerful impact. The villain can only curse his name as the blow connects. He can't understand how Kuki mastered this power so quickly. When our boy's expression remains cold and utterly ruthless, nearby, Kanai and Kyoki can only watch, their own strength fading. The villain finally understands, realizing Kuki is stealing power from his own allies. But instead of fear, the man is thrilled by this twisted display of power. Kanai can only look on in despair, her friend lost to his own darkness. The blonde-haired man is left broken on the ground, completely defeated. Kuki demands to know where his sister is, but the man refuses to answer, only revealing the name of his organization, Mobius. The silver-haired man explains that Mobius is made up of 5 warriors, a group dedicated to protecting the order of their own world. He reveals their job is to perform a magic-eating ritual, which is why Ashia was sent in the first place. The tiny savior puts it all together, realizing these are the people truly orchestrating the apocalypse. But Kuki doesn't care about their grand plans or justifications. He gives the defeated man 5 seconds to tell him where his sister is, or he will end him right here. His eyes are cold, his threat hanging heavy in the air. But his dark ultimatum is cut short as Kanai rushes forward and strikes him across the face. The blow leaves him completely stunned, his rage momentarily broken. She screams at him, refusing to let him throw away his humanity for the sake of power. She reminds him of his original goal, to protect the world, and questions if this is how he honors the power his sister gave him. She accuses him of not caring who gets hurt in his selfish quest. Her words trigger a memory of him defending her own power, as she screams that this cold, ruthless person isn't the Kuki she knows. Her own power flares to life as she declares he's no savior. Her words finally seem to break through his dark haze, asking what kind of mage he truly wants to be. His mind flashes back to a simpler time, to a woman asking what skill he wanted. He remembers his innocent, childish answer, to have the strongest skill of all. And he remembers her gentle question, asking what he would do with all that power. His younger self had made a simple, innocent promise to protect his sister, but she had smiled, telling him that protecting her alone wasn't enough. She taught him that true strength was meant to protect everyone, and that no matter what power he awakened, he was destined to be a great mage. Another memory surfaces of a hero teaching a child a valuable lesson, that real power is used to help others, the true mark of a savior. A lesson that inspired a young Kuki to ask if he could ever become one too. His sister had looked down at him with a gentle, knowing smile, and told him that as long as he never gave up, he absolutely could. Back in the present, her words finally break through the darkness. The darkness in his eyes finally begins to fade as he remembers his true purpose. But as his power recedes, the backlash strikes out at Kanai. The villain smirks, realizing Kuki's magic has suddenly plummeted. He lunges forward, ready to end this once and for all. Kuki is sent crashing to the ground, completely overwhelmed. The villain declares that with Kuki weakened, this will be easy. He lands a series of brutal blows on our boy, and Kuki is left broken on the ground, utterly defeated. But in his mind, a familiar voice asks what he's doing. It's his darker self, urging him to steal more power to save his sister. Kuki can only stare, his mind reeling from the accusation. He admits that it's true he's always been jealous of everyone else's skills, but more than that, he wanted to become a mage his sister could be proud of. Someone who fights for others just like she always did. A mage who protects his comrades and the people who matter most. And he realizes that if he can't become that kind of hero, he'll never be able to face his sister again. He remembers the vow he made to her to protect this world and become its true savior. But the realization sends a jolt of pain through his entire body. And in his mind, he stands resolute, his purpose finally clear once more. The librarian greets him with a gentle smile, calling out his name. She explains that his creation skill changes based on his feelings, and that he's finally understood. A brilliant blue energy surrounds him as he realizes this is his true power. The librarian presents him with the first skill to ever exist, asking him to give it a name. But back in reality, Kuki lies broken and defeated on the ground. Kanai can only call out his name in worry as he begins to stir. The villain stares in shock as Kuki somehow forces himself back to his feet. He closes his eyes, a new name for his power forming in his mind. And his eyes snap open, glowing with a brilliant new skill he calls the Light of Salvation. The villain is completely baffled, unable to sense any magic power coming from him at all. Kuki confirms his power is at 0, and the villain scoffs, assuming he's simply run out of energy. The villain roars in fury, promising to kill Kuki and everyone around him. But a brilliant blue aura erupts from Kuki, leaving his opponent completely stunned. He explains that this is a savior's magic, a power that only activates when he's protecting someone. And when he has someone to protect, his magic power becomes truly endless. The villain scoffs at the idea of infinite magic, unleashing a furious barrage of his own. But Kuki stands his ground, effortlessly blocking every single blow. The villain can't believe it, wondering why his space-jumping attacks are no longer landing. Kuki calmly explains that he now understands his opponent's skill, because once he's copied a skill with his eyes, it can never hit him again. The villain can only scream in frustration, accusing him of cheating. Kuki places a hand on his opponent's chest, unleashing a brilliant surge of light. The villain can only stare in disbelief at this sudden turn of events. A new intricate white crest glows on Kuki's hand, a magic no one has ever seen before. He calls it the light attribute, a power that is uniquely his own. And with a roar, he unleashes his very first true skill. The blonde-haired man is sent flying, his body limp and defeated. Kuki stands over his fallen foe, the battle finally over. Elsewhere, the silver-haired man stands over Mickey's unconscious form. His eyes go wide with shock as he senses the shift in the battle. He realizes with dawning horror that his partner Ginji has been defeated. A new voice chimes in, a blindfolded woman mocking her fallen comrade's pathetic loss. The silver-haired man considers finishing Koki off himself, but decides to retreat for now, knowing their plans have been delayed. Back on the battlefield, Kanai throws her arms around Kuki, overjoyed that he's finally returned to his senses. She marvels at the incredible new power he's awakened, but he gives her all the credit. He thanks her for helping him remember what truly matters. She just smiles, happy to finally be his true comrade. Overcome with emotion, Kuki can only agree through tears of gratitude. But his relief is cut short as he senses his sister's magic nearby, realizing it's rapidly fading. The tiny savior understands immediately, warning that she must be in grave danger. Kuki tells his friends to return to their world, determined to find his sister alone. But two new figures appear from the darkness, telling him he's not going anywhere. The woman, another member of Mobius, casually snaps a photo of her fallen comrade. The tiny savior demands to know who these new enemies are, but the skeleton simply tells him it doesn't matter since they're all about to die. Kuki can feel their immense power as they explain he can't be allowed to interfere with their ritual. The woman offers a cruel smile, asking if he's ready to die for their cause. Kuki's hand glows with his new power, the pressure mounting. The tiny savior leaps into action, ready to defend his friends. But the two villains are suddenly trapped inside a massive dark barrier. The tiny savior shouts for Kuki to go, promising to hold the villains back. Kuki hesitates for a moment, moved by their sacrifice. Kanai echoes the sentiment, urging him to hurry and save his sister. With a final look of gratitude, he offers them a heartfelt thank you. He knows the opening his friends have created will only last for a few seconds. But with his new power surging, he declares that's more than enough time. He dashes past the villains who are determined not to let him escape. But Kanai unleashes a massive phoenix fireball, blocking their path completely. She and the tiny savior stand ready, declaring that they are the villains' new opponents. The skeleton smirks, impressed by their loyalty but doubting they stand any chance at all. The tiny savior admits that before this moment, they would have stood no chance. But now, he and Kanai can both feel a surge of new, incredible power. It's a gift from Kuki, whose new skill has a name, the Giver. He can share his own infinite magic with anyone whose skill he's copied. And his friends gladly accept this power, vowing to hold the line so he can save his sister. Meanwhile, Kuki races through the ruined city, his new power guiding him. But his path is blocked by a massive demonic beast that erupts from the darkness. Kuki doesn't hesitate, the crest on his hand glowing as he unleashes a familiar skill. But his light of salvation has transformed it, infusing his thorns with a holy power that tears the beast apart. Yet as the monster dissolves, Kuki realizes that something is terribly wrong. He can sense his sister's magic, but feels an invisible wall keeping him from getting any closer. He knows he has to hurry and save her, especially while his friends are buying him time. The two villains mockingly ask which of them should be eliminated first. But their fight is interrupted by a new arrival who lands with a surge of blue energy. It's none other than Sage Tetsu, the strongest savior, leaving Kanai and Kyoki completely stunned. The tiny savior can only wonder why the world's strongest hero is suddenly here. A flashback takes us to just a few days ago, as Sage's own power begins to flare. He explains that when the rift opened over the hospital, he realized something was wrong. He had sensed the disturbance and immediately came to investigate the source. And now, back in the present, he declares that he's here to eliminate the threat. Sage explains that deep within this alternate dimension is the very person who placed a curse on him. The revelation leaves Kanai completely stunned. But the female villain just laughs, confirming his accusation. She then summons a terrifying SSS-rank phantom beast to her side. A dark, cursed energy immediately wraps around the number one savior. She boasts that this is her ultimate curse as Sage demands to know why. She explains that she saw a future where monsters would invade their world. The tiny savior realizes she's talking about the coming apocalypse, and she confirms that she saw the seven saviors fail to protect anyone. She explains that in his world, there was one person who was far too troublesome, and with a single finger she points directly at the number one savior. She admits that because he was too strong, she slowly placed a curse on him over time. A curse designed to ensure he wouldn't be at full power when the world needed him most. The horrifying revelation leaves Kanai completely stunned. She finally understands why even the strongest hero was destined to fail. The villain taunts him, knowing her very presence makes the curse even more painful. But the tiny Kyoki steps forward, telling Sage to stand back. He unleashes a new form of his absolute barrier, a massive golden coliseum that traps them all. The tiny savior declares that this dome won't open until one of them is defeated. The female villain smirks, realizing their plan is to split them up. The tiny Kyoki apologizes to Sage, knowing that even with Kuki's power, it will be incredibly difficult for him and Kanai to face both villains at once. But Sage steps forward, his own power flaring as he declares he'll take on the skeleton. The skeletal warrior lunges forward, its red aura crackling with dark energy. Sage meets the attack, his ice blade clashing with the villain's sword. The impact sends a shockwave of red and blue energy through the dome. Their blades lock in a furious struggle, a test of pure strength. The skeleton seems impressed, admitting Seigei's skill is remarkable even while cursed. He then reveals his own blade is an ancient magic that will end the hero with a single touch. The female villain's eyes narrow, promising that they are about to die. She reveals her own ancient magic, the terrifying cursed eye of her phantom beast. She explains that anyone who looks into its gaze will have their body slowly destroyed by its curse. The dark energy immediately wraps around Kanai and Kyoki, the curse taking hold. The villain mocks their pain, telling them to just stay still and accept their fate. But the tiny Kyoki lets out a defiant roar, his body glowing with a golden light. The villain stares in shock as Kyoki explains the curse has no effect on him because he has no flesh. He reveals his body is just a puppet, the same kind of skill her fallen comrade once used. He turns to his friend, asking if Kanai can still fight through the pain. And despite the curse, Kanai grits her teeth, vowing that she can still go on. Kanai unleashes her own power, a brilliant phoenix of healing flames. The villain can only stare in shock as the curse is completely nullified. Kanai explains that with the power Kuki gave her, her healing is stronger than ever. Intrigued, the villain decides to switch from curses to pure brute force. She unleashes her phantom beast, boasting its power is 3 times her own. The tiny Kyoki roars for a full power combined attack, ready to go all out. Kanai's resolve hardens, determined to prove herself useful to Kuki. But the tiny savior insists on taking the lead, vowing to keep his promise. And together, they unleash a devastating fusion of barrier and flame. The tiny Kyoki looks back at Seigei, asking him to handle the rest. Seigei thanks his allies, feeling a surge of power he hasn't felt in a long time. The tiny savior urges him to show them the true strength of humanity's #1 hero. But the skeletal warrior just smirks, summoning a horde of demonic beasts from his own dark power. Kanai and Kyoki can only stare, wondering what kind of monster they're truly facing. But Seigei's eyes glow with an unwavering focus as he prepares to unleash his own skill. He calls upon his absolute water temperature, a power that controls the very elements. And in a single devastating wave, the entire horde of monsters is frozen solid. Kanai can only watch in absolute awe at the overwhelming display. The tiny savior explains that Sage can manipulate moisture to absolute 0 or scorching heat. But the female villain seems completely unfazed, her own phantom beast still ready for a fight. The skeletal warrior explains that while Sage's skill is terrifying, it's useless against him, since he has no moisture to manipulate. Their blades clash in a furious storm of red and blue energy. The skeleton mocks the bad matchup, but Seigei declares he'll just cut him down instead. They trade blows at impossible speeds, their swordsmanship on full display. The villain admits that the title of humanity's strongest is no joke, but he dismisses Seigei as a mere human and unleashes a powerful slash. The hero dodges with incredible speed, much to the skeleton's surprise. The villain reveals his blade causes instant death, and that even a graze is fatal. He promises that the next time he strikes, he won't miss his mark. But Seigei's eyes glow with a cold blue light as he declares he's about to get serious. The skeleton scoffs that his skill is useless, but Seigei agrees, adding that while his opponent has no moisture, he certainly does. A fiery red energy erupts from his chest, a new power taking hold. His eyes burn with a golden intensity, his entire demeanor shifting. He turns to face his foe, his blade now wreathed in a scorching aura. The skeletal warrior can only stare in dawning horror at this new development. He realizes with shock that Seigei is boiling his own blood to amplify his power. The hero explains this technique triples his strength, but admits the boost won't last for long. And with a promise to end this quickly, he lunges forward with blinding speed. The skeleton struggles to react, completely overwhelmed by the hero's impossible velocity. The skeleton can't even track the path of Seigei's blade. He's immediately thrown on the defensive by the hero's furious assault. The villain struggles to parry, barely keeping up with the onslaught. From the sidelines, Kanai and Kyoki can't even see their movements. The air fills with the clash of steel, a blur of red and blue. Even the skeleton is impressed by the hero's magnificent swordsmanship. He compares the relentless, beautiful assault to a deadly sword dance. But Seigei's focus is absolute, his eyes locked on his target. A sudden opening leaves the skeletal warrior completely stunned. And the #1 savior prepares to deliver the final blow. And with a final, magnificent slash, Seigei's blade finds its mark. The headless body of the warrior collapses to the ground, utterly defeated. But the strain of his own power is clearly taking its toll on the #1 savior. Kanai can only watch in awe, witnessing the true strength of the world's strongest hero. Even the tiny Kyoki is left completely speechless by the overwhelming display. Sage turns to his allies asking if they're able to move, but they're still recovering. But the female villain's phantom beast looms over them, ready to strike. Without even turning around, Sage unleashes another wave of his power, freezing the creature solid. He offers them a rare smile, thanking them for their help and telling them to rest. The tiny savior is stunned by the sudden show of gratitude from the notoriously cold hero. Meanwhile, Kuki races through the ruined city, his new power guiding him. But he quickly realizes that something is terribly wrong. The closer he gets to his sister's magic, the further away he seems to be. He understands he's been trapped inside some kind of magical maze. So with a roar of frustration, he decides to simply destroy it from the inside out. The blast shatters the illusion, but what he finds leaves him completely horrified. The silver-haired man stands over his sister's unconscious body. Kuki can only scream her name, having finally broken through the trap. The villain smirks, impressed by his power, but revealing the ritual is nearly complete. With a furious roar, Kuki unleashes his light of salvation, demanding they give his sister back. But the villain just smirks, his own dark power flaring to life. Kuki's attack is met with an effortless, almost casual defense. Our boy can only stare in shock, as his own power is reflected right back at him. The villain calmly tells him to relax, his attack completely nullified. Kuki demands to know what this ritual is, what they're doing to his sister. But the man simply repeats his chilling claim that Mickey isn't his sister at all. He then reveals a shocking new truth that she is their little sister. The words leave Kuki completely and utterly speechless. His entire world is shattered by this impossible revelation. But a familiar voice suddenly echoes in his mind, and he wonders if it's his sister. The silver-haired man smirks, surprised that Kuki can hear her voice. She thanks him for coming all this way and apologizes for the confusion. And then she confirms the impossible that she was once a member of Mobius. She explains that Mobius is a group of 5 warriors, gathered from different dimensions by a powerful mage. And among them, she lived as the youngest of the 5. Their role was to maintain this alternate dimension where the monsters live, and to send them out to other worlds to support the invasion. But she admits that she always had doubts about their mission. She could never shake the feeling that what they were doing was wrong. She recalls hearing the screams of the innocent, a sound that haunted her. So she finally spoke up, telling her comrades that their mission was wrong. But her silver-haired brother just told her to stop thinking such foolish thoughts. She insisted that she couldn't be a part of any more invasions. But the blonde-haired man grabbed her, demanding she just do her job. They reminded her of the mission given to them by their mysterious leader, and that abandoning it was a completely unforgivable act. But her resolve was set, her mind made up. And so she ran away from her duty, determined to find another dimension where she could live in peace. She reveals she took the Book of Regression with her, almost like a good luck charm. And with that, she left her own dimension behind, seeking a new life. She was determined to find a peaceful world where she could finally belong. And the first person to find her in this new world was the woman who would become her mother. After that day, the woman took her in, and began to raise her as her very own child. For the first time, Mickey knew the warmth of a real family. But her peaceful new life was about to change once more, with the arrival of a brand new family member. And that was the day that Kuki was born, making her his older sister. She explains that the moment she held him, she was truly happy, because she finally had a family that wasn't bound by duty, but by real unconditional love. She tells him that every single day since they met, through every bedtime story and shared moment, and every step they took together as they grew, her entire world was filled with a brilliant, shining light. She thanks him for giving her a reason to smile, for making her part of his family, a simple, heartfelt thank you for the life he unknowingly gave her. And back in the present, Kuki can only listen, his world completely shattered. Her voice tells him how admirable he's become, but begs him to run away. She warns that her brother Roku is far too strong for him to face. But Kuki roars back that he could never abandon her because of everything she taught him. He remembers her always being there, telling him that he could do anything. Her gentle smile and unwavering belief that he would always succeed if he never gave up. And with that memory fueling him, he vows to bring his sister home no matter what. A brilliant blue aura erupts from his body as he screams that their fight is over. But Roku just smirks, dismissing him as an outsider in a family matter.